glancing behind him, amidst the blue water. The giant sword that exudes a shocking aura and unparalleled murderous intent caused even Yang Kai's soul to shiver. Behind the giant sword, Yang Kai also vaguely saw traces of the previous generation saintess. She was actually chasing after them, apparently intent on putting Yang Kai and Enlinger to death. As they continued to dive, Yang Kai hurriedly shouted to Enlinger, "If you want to live, focus. This is no time to wallow in sadness." Hearing this, Enlinger nodded quickly and immediately began pouring her true qi into Yang Kai's body. In an instant, Yang Kai felt the flow of his true qi become both faster and stronger. The secret art the Nine Heavens Holy Land Saintess cultivated could allow Yang Kai to improve his combat power for a short time, which was why he brought Enlinger along when he fled. True qi bursting out, the same Nine Heavens divine skills, the profound heavenly sword, appeared in Yang Kai's hand. However, even with the support of Enlinger, Yang Kai could only create a profound heavenly sword with a length of several tens of meters, a far cry from the one saintess Nen sent towards them. The two Nine Heavens divine skills shot towards each other from opposite directions and soon collided. A huge muffled sound rang out as Yang Kai's profound heavenly sword was instantly ground into dust, the surrounding seawater exploding outwards from the force of the collision. The shockwave propelling Yang Kai and Enlinger downwards at an even faster pace. The figure of Saintess Nan was also momentarily pushed back, but she soon overcame this resistance and began chasing them again. "What weaknesses do the saintesses of your Nine Heavens have?" Yang Kai asked urgently. "There's no such thing. She can only be stopped by someone with strength exceeding hers. However, I can try stalling her for a while." Enlinger clenched her teeth and entrusted herself completely to Yang Kai, focusing all her attention on her mind and releasing a spiritual energy wave towards Saintess Nan. Yang Kai vaguely felt as if he heard a song resonating with his soul, seemingly touching the very depths of the human heart. Anyone who heard this song couldn't help relaxing and becoming tranquil. His eyes narrowing, Yang Kai quickly concentrating as he realized that this soul skill should be similar to the one Enlinger previously used back in the Soul Battle Hall, which had a calming effect. Saintess Nan was already dead, and only her instincts and strong obsession were supporting her actions. So using this kind of soul skill on her was an ideal solution. From what Yang Kai could perceive, the movements of Saintess Nan indeed became slower, and the true qi fluctuations coming from her body also grew somewhat unstable, as if she was suffering a kind of mental torment. Good. Yang Kai's spirit lifted. As long as Enlinger could delay this Saint Realm woman, he was fully confident they could escape. "I can't keep this up for very long." Enlinger pretty face paled as she hoarsely said. Yang Kai turned his gaze towards her and saw she was also suffering greatly. This was obvious though, given the massive difference in their cultivations. Enlinger using a soul skill to deal with Saintess Nan was bound to cause no small amount of backlash. Yang Kai's expression became dignified once again as he continuing cutting through the water, racking his brain to find other ways to delay their pursuer. Many ideas came to mind, but he rejected all of them immediately as the gap in their strength was simply too great. Any conventional method he tried to use would at best be a waste of time and at worst, distract him, causing them to fall into even greater danger. The Soul Battle Hall would probably be useful. After all, it was a genuine saint-grade artifact. Once he activated it, Yang Kai's own soul would be dragged into that white space. But even if it was a contest of souls with Saintess Nan, he had no confidence in defeating her. His demon eye of annihilation was also incredibly powerful, but if Saintess Nan's soul didn't rush into his knowledge sea, the demon eye of annihilation couldn't play any role. Besides purifying any soul avatar that broke into Yang Kai knowledge sea, it could only absorb the soul remnants of recently deceased cultivators nearby Yang Kai. Currently, Saintess Nan couldn't strictly be described as dead. Otherwise, the demon eye of annihilation would already have activated. Thinking it over, Yang Kai concluded he had no options here and inevitably grew somewhat anxious. At that moment, the song that had been ringing in his ears suddenly stopped and Enlinger coughed out a bloody mist, her tender body going completely limp in Yang Kai's arms, panting heavily as extreme weakness overcame her. Without the restraint of Enlinger's soul skill, Saintess Nan once again restored her previous speed and began closing the distance between her and Yang Kai. Fortunately, The huge, profound heavenly sword had apparently exhausted its true chi and dissipated, and Xianxia had put some distance between them. Diving further and further, numerous sea beasts and giant fish which had been attracted by all the noise began gathering around, all of which Xianxia simply ignored as he raced ever downwards. On the other hand, Saintess Nan, as Enlinger had said, actually bothered killing everything around her, reaping the lives of a great many of these sea beasts. Although slaughtering these beasts was as simple as waving her hands, the sheer number of them slightly hindered Saintess Nan's speed, buying Xianxia and Enlinger a precious few moments. Xianxia never felt time pass so slowly, being relentlessly chased by a Saint Realm Master, certain death approaching ever closer. Each breath seemed like an eternity. Noticing a faint luminescence up ahead, Xianxia couldn't help crying out happily, "We're almost there!" Hearing this, Enlinger managed to open her eyes and asked weakly, "At the end, can you tell me your name? Your real name? If we fall here, can't I at least know whose arms I died in?" Xianxia's expression ramped, totally unable to understand how this young woman's head worked or why she would bother asking such a dumb question now. But this time, he didn't bother concealing it anymore and told her what she wanted to know. Enlinger grinned back at him. "If we survive this, will you follow me back to the Holy Land?" "Never." Xianxia refused unceremoniously. "If you keep spouting nonsense, I'll throw you away right here, right now." "Ruthless bastard." As the two bantered back and forth, they arrived outside the barrier of the ancient ruins. Xianxia didn't even pause and rushed straight inside, the barrier not hindering him in any way. Upon entering the barrier, without the seawater to hinder him, Xianxia's speed rose to its maximum again, his wind and thunder wings appearing behind him as he and Enlinger shot forward like an arrow from a bow. Racing towards the location of the void corridor, Xianxia and Enlinger moved so quickly they left behind a trail of afterimages. Moments after the two of them rushed inside the barrier, Saintess Nan also rushed in, her figure flickering as she chased after Xianxia, her speed in no way inferior. Feeling the terrifying pressure approaching him from behind, Xianxia's only thought was to escape, having not the slightest intention of fighting this Saint Realm Master. As he flew forward, the Yang attribute energy from the void corridor grew stronger and stronger, letting the two of them know they were getting closer to where the void corridor existed. Xianxia clenched his teeth and continued pushing his speed to its limit. Suddenly, from behind, Xianxia felt a burst of true chi. Xianxia's expression changed dramatically as he realized Saintess Nan had begun attacking again, raising his degree of wariness to its maximum as he monitored his surroundings. In front of him, a giant net strangely appeared and rapidly moved towards him. "Capturing Heaven Net," Enlinger exclaimed. "Quickly avoid it. Once one is caught in it, even their soul won't be able to escape." There was no need to remind Xianxia of this. Although he didn't understand the specifics of this divine skill, as someone with a wealth of experience, he naturally wouldn't allow this capturing heaven net to ensnare him. The instant he dodged the capturing heaven net, though, another burst of true chi erupted behind him. A jade-like hand that seemed to fill the entire sky appeared and reached out towards them. Seeing this, Xianxia couldn't help feeling like the heavens themselves were trying to grab hold of him. There was no way to outrun this hand, or to evade it. Their capture seemed inevitable. "Covering heaven hand," Enlinger murmured, her face completely ashen, a bleak smile slowly forming on her lips as she closed her beautiful eyes, as if she thought that all hope was lost and death would soon take her. "Devil transformation," Xianxia called out, and the next moment, the world seemed to tremble as an extremely potent demonic chi suddenly spread out from his body, demon crests appearing all over his physique before sinking into his skin and disappearing in the next instant. Immediately, Xianxia's blood force and the momentum surrounding his body soared to an incredible level. Enlinger's eyes shot open, her tender body shuddering as she stared dumbfounded at the man holding her, her beautiful face filled with astonishment. At this moment, she felt like Xianxia had transformed into a completely different person, his body emitting a bloody and cruel aura, yet somehow simultaneously feeling more reliable than before. His body was like a great mountain which would remain unmoved even in the face of torrential wind and rain. The incredible surge in moment broke free of the covering heaven hands imposing pressure, and when the devastating attack arrived, all it managed to grasp was airs. Throughout the ancient ruins, countless houses collapsed as waves of pressure visible to the naked eye pulsed from Xianxia's body and spread to the surrounding area, traveling as far as the outer barrier and even disturbing the outside sea. All of a sudden, Xianxia lurched forward, his face completely pale, and Linger simultaneously felt a hot liquid splash onto her face. Rubbing her cheek, she quickly discovered that this liquid was actually blood that was overflowing from Xianxia's mouth. Obviously, he had not completely been able to avoid the impact of the covering heaven hand just now and had his stance disrupted. Shit! Xianxia cursed under his breath as he quickly steadied himself and continued to escape, directing his eyes towards his abdomen as he did so. Suspicious. And Linger followed his gaze and immediately covered her mouth in shock as she screamed, "Punishing Heaven Spear!" At some unknown point, a thick, shimmering spear had inserted itself into Xianxia's stomach. This spear was also one of the 9 heavens' divine skills. Amidst all the shock and chaos, not only had Linger failed to notice, even Xianxia hadn't realized until now that he had been pierced by this spear. As fresh blood stained Xianxia's clothes, if one were to look carefully, they would notice some faint traces of golden. And Linger suddenly burst into tears as she truly thought all hope was lost now. The power of the 9 heavens' divine skills was something she knew better than almost anyone. Not to mention that this punishing heaven spear had stemmed from her Saintess Nan's hand without the slightest trace of mercy. Even if Xianxia was an extraordinary genius, his 5 viscera and 6 organs had likely already become pulp and were not far from death. The only reason he had yet to fall and was still struggling forward was probably due to sheer willpower. Considering all this, Linger was filled with sorrow and guilt. Linger couldn't help thinking that if back in the Soul Battle Hall, she hadn't used her soul skill on Xianxia, he never would have learned the 9 heavens' divine skills and wouldn't now be facing her Saintess Nan's pursuit. Her head filling with such thoughts, she naturally felt she had harmed Xianxia, causing him to suffer an untimely death far before his time. Fuck. You better teach me all of your damn divine skills, or else this time I'll have suffered a huge loss. Xianxia's face was pale white, but he still endured the pain assaulting his body and managed to angrily complain. He hadn't expected this punishing heaven spear could even penetrate his body after using his devil transformation. Xianxia's current physique was so intrepid that he could even resist the destructive force of a starry sky storm, but this Saintess Nan had still managed to pierce him like paper. It was obvious just from this how powerful this divine skill was. If it had been any other transcendent, having suffered this blow from Saintess Nan, they would likely have already been vaporized. How can you be thinking about such things even now? And Linger stretched out her hand as she stared at the deep wound on Xianxia's body. Feeling the fresh blood flowing down her fingers, her heart clenched tightly as tears rolled down her face, soaking her clothes. "Can you stop crying already? All your blubbering is distracting me," Xianxia shouted. "You silly woman. How can you be so weak under pressure?" Hearing his harsh words, Linger quickly stifled her voice, but she was unable to stop her tears from leaking out. Suddenly, in an open space up ahead, a large black hole which seemed like it led to an unknown abyss appeared, causing Xianxia's face to light up. "We're here." Gathering the remainder of his strength, Xianxia crashed towards the void corridor within Linger. Just as he reached the void corridor, Xianxia felt Saintess Nan's murderous intent converge on him, arriving at the final moment of their escape. How could Xianxia possibly let his guard down? Tossing Linger into the void corridor, Xianxia abruptly turned around and summoned a giant black dragon above his head. Opening its mouth and letting out a great roar, this black dragon charged towards the approaching Saintess Nan. Hong long long, a massive explosion occurred as the two collided. The black dragon only lasted for an instant before collapsing and Saintess Nan shot towards Xianxia, her momentum not decreasing in the slightest as the latter dove into the void corridor. Xianxia grinned as blood trickled from his mouth and his demonic chi fiercely burst out, wreaking havoc all around. At the bottom of the sea, the void corridor, which had existed for countless years, was simply unable to bear this kind of violent explosion and quickly shattered, sending out a violent shockwave of void energy, swallowing up Saintess Nan and Yang Kai. In the next moment, Yang Kai felt a strong sense of vertigo and nearly passed out. Through pure force of will, Yang Kai forced himself to remain awake, and after a few breaths, the darkness around him was swept away and a sea of white clouds appeared high up in the sky above his head. There was no sun, moon, or stars to be seen, and only a faint scent of heat lingered in the air. This hot aura made Yang Kai feel somewhat comfortable. Falling through the air, Yang Kai figured he had successfully been sent to a distant place by the void corridor because the aura of Saintess Nan was nowhere to be found. Just before he crossed the void corridor's threshold, Yang Kai deliberately destroyed it, so he estimated that Saintess Nan would not be able to find them for quite some time. Thinking so, Yang Kai breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Being chased by a Saint Realm Master was not a pleasant experience. That Saintess Nan should have at least been a second-order saint, because she was much more powerful than Ice Sex Qian Yu. In front of her, Yang Kai had no power to fight back and was even hard-pressed to escape. His falling body was suddenly hugged by a pair of jade arms. Yang Kai turned to look, and sure enough, the one who caught him was Enlinger, who he had sent through the void corridor ahead of him. A big smile plastered all over her still crying face. Yang Kai struggled for a moment and managed to free himself from her embrace and stand on his own atop a giant tree, gasping heavily as he began examining his surroundings. He and Enlinger were currently standing on a towering tree at least 300 meters off the ground and were surrounded by a dense and vibrant forest. Yang Kai also quickly noticed a strange phenomenon. The trees here seemed to be somewhat different from others he had seen, not just in shape, but in nature, as they had a faint yang attribute energy flowing through them. Simply put, these trees seemed to possess a yang attribute aura. Yang Kai was incredibly puzzled. These trees seemed to be just ordinary trees and not any kind of precious treasure or spirit grass, so how could they have a yang attribute aura? Looking up at the hazy sky, Yang Kai frowned and muttered, "Mysterious small world? Only mysterious small worlds would have no sun, moon, or stars. The one where the ancient demon clan lived was also like this." Ah? A mysterious small world. Enlinger was obviously taken aback, but that didn't stop her beautiful eyes from filling with curiosity. She had never seen or entered a mysterious small world and had only heard about them in rumors. Coming to this kind of place for the first time was obviously novel to her. This should be a mysterious small world. Yang Kai nodded lightly, but after speaking just a few words, he began violently coughing and all the wounds on his body once again began leaking blood. "You need to rest and recover." Enlinger held him nervously. The wounds Yang Kai had suffered this time were all quite serious. Not only was he run through by Saintess Nan's punishing heaven spear, but also the last moment, when he destroyed the void corridor, the resulting explosion and the rampant power of void had also left their mark on him. His clothes were tattered and scars marred his entire body while parts of his flesh had been ripped apart entirely. It was an incredibly miserable picture. An average person would have died several times over having received these kinds of injuries, but Yang Kai still had the strength to speak and even the energy to observe the surrounding environment, causing Enlinger to not know whether to laugh or cry. As she spoke, Enlinger took out a bottle of pills from the universe bag on her belt and pushed it into Yang Kai's hands. "This is my Holy Land's Saint Grade healing pill. Quickly take it." Yang Kai nodded lightly, already feeling unsteady on his feet, accepting the pill bottle, pouring a few out, and directly swallowing them. Before he had time to begin refining them, though, Yang Kai felt a burning heat rapidly shoot towards him from all directions, and in the next instant, he found himself and Enlinger bound by energy ropes. The two of them were caught completely off guard, quickly incapacitated, and fell to the ground. After landing, Yang Kai found he was unable to move, having already exhausted all of his strength. Suffering from a sudden surprise attack, Yang Kai had no way to resist and soon fainted. God damn it! Captured again? That was the last thought to go through his mind as Yang Kai's eyes went dark. He had twice entered mysterious small worlds since arriving in Tongshen realm, both times as a captive. The first time he had been abducted by the coffin-carrying man, and this time, before he could even get his bearings, he had been captured. It was really terrible luck. Hateful demon race. Yang Kai faintly heard someone curse and saw a number of indistinct figures approaching him before his consciousness completely faded. Amidst the pitch-black darkness or night, Yang Kai slowly woke up. Every single inch of his body ached. Even with his strong physique, he could not simply ignore such intense trauma. Not sitting up or even opening his eyes immediately, Yang Kai quickly probed his current situation. A moment later, Yang Kai's expression became gloomy. Just as he imagined, his true chi and spiritual energy had a number of seals placed on them. In order to unseal his true chi, it would take him some time, but it shouldn't be impossible. It was likely someone with only slightly higher strength than his own had applied his bindings. As for the seal on his knowledge sea, Yang Kai was confident he could easily crack it, but to not attract any unwanted attention, he didn't dare act rashly. He didn't know where he was or what kind of masters were lurking around. If he were to free himself haphazardly, it would likely end very badly for him. However, something that was of particular interest to him was the seal on his true chi actually had a faint yang attribute aura to it, and the ambient yang chi in the air was far richer than the outside world. The yang attribute aura he had felt in the ancient ruins should have originated from this place. The injuries on his body had already mostly healed, allowing him to infer that he had been in a coma for at least 3 days. There were some other auras nearby, but none of them belonged to Enlinger. Where had that woman gone? Enlinger was a rare beauty with a noble and innocent demeanor. If she had fallen into the hands of unscrupulous people, it wouldn't end well for her. Yang Kai couldn't help but slightly worrying about her. Right now he seemed to be in some kind of prison cell which was constructed of sturdy wood, not something he could break easily with his true chi sealed. After opening his eyes and taking a moment to adjust to the ambient light, Yang Kai slowly sat up. This movement did not go unnoticed by the others around him, and soon someone came over and muttered in surprise, "HM? Brat, you're actually alive? How is that possible? Where is this place? Who are you?" Yang Kai asked as he looked around. "Shut up. You'll speak only when spoken to. I'll pull out your tongue if you keep blabbing." The man coldly snorted, his attitude extremely unfriendly, opening the cell door as he ordered, "Get out. My clan's leader wants to see you." "Leader?" Yang Kai frowned. "Stop asking questions and do as you're told. Otherwise I'll chop you up and feed you to the divine tree right now." The man threatened as he glared towards Yang Kai, turning around and walking out. "Follow me." Yang Kai's expression remained indifferent as he followed the man outside, quietly inspecting his surroundings as he walked forward. Currently, he was in a dark and damp corridor that was lined with cells similar to the one Yang Kai was in before, each one separated from the others. There were also a number of people in these cells who, after hearing movement, turned their eyes towards him curiously. Yang Kai's brow wrinkled when he saw these inmates, feeling like something was off with them. The auras these people emitted were different from those of average people. Strictly speaking, there were traces of demonic chi lingering around each and every one of them. Among these people, Yang Kai didn't see any trace of Enlinger, nor were there any signs of where she might have been taken. Soon, Yang Kai followed the man out of prison. After coming outside into the light, the man looked back at Yang Kai and seemed to want to say something, but after seeing his prisoner's state, he couldn't help showing a shocked expression as he pointed at him and stuttered, Your body? Is there something wrong?" Yang Kai asked indifferently. "You were on death's door. How are you?" When Yang Kai was first brought here, there wasn't one place on his body that wasn't wounded. His stomach had even been pierced clean through, leaving behind a gaping hole. Everyone had thought he'd be dead before night fell. But now, seeing him essentially unharmed, the man couldn't help feeling somewhat stunned and uncomfortable. "My restorative abilities are better than most." "Better than most" doesn't even begin to describe it. The man stared at Yang Kai distrustfully, suddenly asking coldly, "Brat, you must have used some miraculous healing pill. If you still have any, hand them over. If I find them on you later, you'll only suffer more." "I don't have anything like that." Yang Kai shook his head. The man swept his eyes up and down Yang Kai, seemingly looking for traces of a hidden pocket or universe bag. Unfortunately for him, he didn't discover anything and was somewhat disappointed. Grinding his teeth unhappily, he grabbed Yang Kai and pushed him forward. Inside a large hall, many people were gathered, each of them having an almost glowing complexion, a thick and somewhat scalding aura pulsing from each of their bodies. Everyone here, whether they were male or female, young or old, actually cultivated a yang attribute secret art similar to Yang Kai. On top of that, each of their cultivations wasn't low, the weakest of them still having reached the Immortal Ascension boundary 8th stage, while a fair number of them were Transcendents. There were more than a dozen people gathered here, and at the head of the hall sat an old man with a particularly strong aura. This old man's hair was red and wore an indifferent expression, giving off an imposing air. Next to the old man was a square-faced youth wearing a gray shirt who made no attempt to conceal his surging true chi. This youth was actually a third-order transcendent. This group of people was apparently in the middle of some kind of discussion, but when Yang Kai arrived, all of them couldn't help stopping and casting looks of surprise and amazement towards him, a strong sense of curiosity flashing across their eyes. "Leader, I've brought him." The man who led Yang Kai here cupped his fists and said. The old man sitting at the head of the room nodded lightly before waving his hand, dismissing the man. Before he left, though, he didn't forget to warn Yang Kai about showing proper respect again. "Yifeng, is this the human you brought back?" The old man stroked his beard and temperately asked as he stared deeply towards Yang Kai. As the old man spoke these words, Yang Kai could clearly feel a burning aura probing his body, seemingly inspecting him inside and out. The young man standing next to the old man quickly responded, also staring at Yang Kai somewhat strangely. "Didn't you say he was on the verge of death? How can he be standing here now like nothing happened?" The old man asked again. Yifeng scratched his head and frowned. "I don't know. When we brought him back here, he looked like he would die at any moment. I thought he wouldn't last more than a day." "Hey kid, what happened? How did you heal yourself?" Yang Kai looked at the youth, then at the old man, wrinkling his brow as he asked. "From what you've said just now, you don't seem to be human. Only someone from a different race would refer to him as human." "Impudence." Yifeng's expression immediately became cold. "When I ask you something, you answer, otherwise keep your mouth shut." Saying so, he waved his hand. A stream of energy, like a whip, struck Yang Kai's body. With a snapping sound, a new bloody mark appeared on Yang Kai's chest, with his true chi sealed. There was no way he could have resisted such an attack. Yang Kai didn't move and simply grit his teeth, turning his eyes towards the young man and staring fiercely. "You've got guts at least." Yifeng sneered, raising his hand again and condensing his true chi, seemingly planning on teaching this rude brat a harsh lesson. "Enough, Yifeng." The old man suddenly raised his hand and stopped the youth from whipping Yang Kai, staring at the latter with a tinge of curiosity as he grinned. "Human race kid, you have some skill. If I am not mistaken, the strength of your physique isn't inferior to an average saint's, is it?" "What?" Yifeng's expression changed to one of shock. "But his cultivation is only at the first-order transcendent realm. He must have continuously tempered his body in order to achieve his current strength. Having such a strong physique at such a young age, truly impressive." The old man smiled and asked, "How did you do it?" "Every day I had someone whip me 10,000 times. Anyone who does the same can achieve what I have." Yang Kai grinned back. A stupid way of doing things, but indeed possible. Whether the old man didn't know Yang Kai was spouting nonsense or just didn't care, he simply the issue dropped and moved on. "Because you are a human, we've let you live for now. If you were a member of the demon race, your luck wouldn't have been so good." Saying so, the old man's expression suddenly became solemn as he asked, "Boy, I'll ask you some questions. If I am satisfied with your answers, I can allow you to live a few more days. If I am not, you know the consequences." People under the eaves have to bow, so Yang Kai simply nodded. "Do you any relationship with the demon race?" "No, you don't? Then why did you appear here? Where did you come in from?" "I came here from the seabed. There was a void corridor in an ancient ruin I recently explored. My companion and I were being chased by a powerful master and used that void corridor to escape. After coming to my senses, I found myself here." As Yang Kai spoke, the old man continued staring fixedly at him, seemingly wanting to determine if the former was lying. After a moment of silence, the old man continued, "Tell me about what happened, in detail." Under the gaze of the other party, Yang Kai began narrating his story, neither lying nor trying to conceal anything. The strength of this old man was unfathomable, and Yang Kai didn't know whether the former had some kind of special skills regarding interrogation, so right now, lying would likely be counterproductive. "You managed to escape from the pursuit of a Saint Realm Master?" The old man was astonished. "Your skill isn't small." "Ha! It was mostly luck. I almost died." The old man nodded lightly, accepting Yang Kai's explanation. "Why did you think I had some sort of connection with the demon race? Also, where is my companion now? What's her situation?" Yang Kai asked. "Brat, you certainly have a lot of question." Yifeng coldly snorted. The old man also frowned, apparently displeased with Yang Kai asking so many questions, but he still responded. "Because only those from the demon race have ever entered this place, you are the first human to come here. As for your companion, you don't have to worry. She is fine. Only her freedom of movement has been restricted." Saying so, he then turned to Yifeng. "Go back to the place you found them, see if there is another entrance. If you find one, destroy it." Yifeng was just about to nod when Yang Kai cut in. "There's no need for that. I destroyed the void corridor before coming here. And we're supposed to just take your word for that?" Yifeng snorted as he glared over at Yang Kai, quickly cupping his fists to the old man before leading a group of people back to the forest Yang Kai had appeared in. After Yifeng left, the old man continued, "You cultivate a Yang attribute secret art?" Yang Kai nodded. The old man grinned. "Not many humans cultivate Yang attribute secret art, and looking from your appearance, your cultivation technique isn't bad, is it?" Yang Kai's expression tightened slightly, thinking this old man was interested in his true Yang secret art. But before he could say anything, the old man simply waved his hand dismissively and said, "But even the best human Yang attribute secret art is nothing compared to ours." When the old man said this, everyone else in the room wore a proud expression and nodded, directing contemptuous looks towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression relaxed as he asked, "You all seem to cultivate Yang attribute secret arts. What race are you, and where is this place?" "Us." The old man stroked his beard and said, "We are human yet also not human." Yang Kai's brow furrowed as he listened to this non-answer. "Our ancestors belonged to the human race, but we are a little different from humans now," the old man continued, not explaining much. "This place is our home. You outsiders refer to it as a mysterious small world. I saw a lot of people back in your dungeon. Are they all from the demon race? What hatred do you have with the demon race? Boy, you really have a lot of questions. It seems you're one of those fools who don't know their places." The old man stared him coldly, but still grit his teeth and muttered, "The hatred between us and the demon race is absolutely irreconcilable. One day we will wipe all of the demon race from existence. As for you, we won't kill you for the time being. Your strange physique should have some uses for us." Saying so, he narrowed his eyes towards Yang Kai once more before waving his hand. "Take him away." Immediately, one of the guards came up to Yang Kai and pushed him towards the door. After Yang Kai had left, everyone in the hall began chattering. "Leader, the physique of that brat is really quite unique. What's more, he actually cultivates a Yang attribute secret art. If we turn him into nutrients for the divine tree, perhaps the divine tree will be stable for a while. And the divine tree has become more and more unstable recently. If this continues, we may end up losing our place of shelter. Grabbing these demon race dregs isn't a long-term solution. We need to figure out how to resolve the issue with the divine tree. If the divine tree were to have an accident, our clan would be devastated." "All of you shut up," the old man shouted. "Do you think this old master doesn't want to solve this problem? We still don't even know what the cause of all this is. So how do we go about solving it?" Hearing this, everyone's expression sank. After a brief silence, the old man issued a new commanded, "Su Qiu, go inform our clansmen to take special care of that boy. Give him the best food available and lift the seals on his body. Also, send him one of the divine tree's fruits. I want him restored to his peak condition as soon as possible. Yes. The man named Suqiu quickly got up and walked outside to carry out his orders. Everyone in the room secretly gripped their fists with a sense of anticipation, knowing what their leader was planning. Yang Kai was brought back to the same damp and dark prison and shoved into a new cell. Inside this cell there was another figure with a bleak expression on their face, sitting curled up in the corner, weeping softly. After hearing movement from the front of their cell, this person looked up, and in an instant, her beautiful face lit as she shouted tenderly, "Yang Kai!" As she spoke, she quickly jumped to her feet and rushed over towards him while inspecting him carefully, soon discovering that he had essentially recovered from his injuries, greatly astonishing her. And Linger was separated from Yang Kai and brought here several days ago. She, like everyone else, had thought that after suffering such intense wounds, Yang Kai would either be permanently crippled or worse, dead. Never had she expected him to appear before her so quickly and in good condition. Yang Kai glanced at her and signaled with his eyes for her to remain quiet. Only after the two guards outside had left did he bring her to the corner of the cell. "Are you all right?" Yang Kai glanced at her and found that aside from her eyes being swollen from crying, her clothes and face were still in order. And Linger shook her head. "I'm fine. They haven't done anything to me. What about you?" "I'm fine." Yang Kai grinned. "Where is this place? Do you know who those people are? Why are they holding us prisoner?" "I'm not entirely clear. All I know is that they don't seem to be human and that they have some kind of deep hatred with the demon race." Yang Kai glanced around at the adjacent cells where a number of curious pairs of eyes were staring at him and in Linger, each of the people behind these eyes giving off a faint demonic aura. These people should be members of the demon race who were caught and brought here, out of the wolf's mouth and into the tiger's den. And Linger sighed, her expression quite ugly. "At the very least, your Aunt Nan won't be able to find us for a while." Yang Kai sat down and said, "Compared to being pursued by the previous generation's 9 heaven saintess, this place seemed safer, at least for now." Listening to Yang Kai's words, and Linger's mood became a bit better, also sitting down next to Yang Kai and snuggling up beside him. Yang Kai didn't pay her actions any mind and instead focused his attention on the surrounding demon race people. These people should have had their demonic chi and divine senses sealed as well, but even if they weren't, in this place where the air was rich in yang attribute energy, their demonic chi would receive a great degree of suppression. The number of demons held here numbered at least a dozen or so, and their cultivations varied quite a bit. As for their exact strength, Yang Kai couldn't tell. With a seal still on his knowledge sea, he didn't dare use his divine sense forcefully to spy on others. As Yang Kai was observing his neighbors, a man suddenly came over to his cell. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he inspected this man. Yang Kai had seen this man in the hall just now. He had been sitting in a relatively high position and could probably be counted as one of this place's masters. The man stood outside the cell and stared at Yang Kai indifferently. A moment later, a number of others appeared as well. "Open the cell." The lead man told one of the guards, who immediately opened the cell's door. The people who had just arrived walked in and an enticing aroma filled the cell. Yang Kai was amazed because he found that these people had actually brought trays of beautifully arranged delicacies as well as several jugs of wine. "Brat, consider yourself lucky. Our leader has told us to take good care of you." The lead man coldly snorted, waving his hand and sending a burst of true chi into Yang Kai. The next moment, Yang Kai felt all the seals in his body disappear and his true chi once again began flowing through his meridians, his strength quickly recovering. However, Yang Kai didn't make any hasty movements. The other party so casually unsealing his true chi was obviously because he wasn't worried about Yang Kai being able to escape or even hurt him. The trays of food and drink were placed down in front of Yang Kai while the lead man stood by and watched indifferently. "What's the meaning of this?" Yang Kai frowned. These people had suddenly brought him tasty food and fine wine, and had then proceeded to unseal his true chi and spiritual energy. Such inexplicable behavior of course made Yang Kai feel vigilant. There was no such thing as a free lunch. "No meaning," the man sneered, slowly walking over and opening his hand, revealing a pale yellow fruit the size of a small fist. The moment this fruit appeared, Yang Kai felt the surrounding Yang attribute energy become stronger, and a fragrant scent brush past his nose. His brow rising, Yang Kai stared fixedly at this fruit. Humph, even after offering this to you, the way you act is still filled with suspicion. Hurry up and eat it. The man tossed the fruit over and Yang Kai caught it, staring back and forth between the fruit and the man's face suspiciously. The lead man no longer said anything and simply turned around and left with his clansmen. A moment later, the group had disappeared. Yang Kai sat deep in thought, not eating the fruit in his hand or touching the food in front of him, unable to hide his confusion. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't understand what was going on. Suddenly, from the cell to his left, a strange laughter rang out. Human brat, your luck isn't bad. You actually get a nice meal before you die. It seems like those bastards value you quite a bit. Yang Kai's brow wrinkled as he glanced over at the source of the voice, but the light was too dim for him to tell what this man looked like. His eyes narrowing slightly before relaxing, Yang Kai let out a friendly laugh and asked, Friend, everyone here is in the same predicament. Is there any need to taunt one another? Do you want some of this? Nope. Best of luck to you. The man flatly rejected Yang Kai's offer and then stopped talking. Is it poisoned? And Linger asked nervously. You think too much. Yang Kai shook his head. If these people really wanted to kill him, they didn't need to use such petty tricks. From the strength they had shown, they definitely had the ability to put Yang Kai and Linger to death instantly. Why waste good food simply to poison them? On top of that, although Yang Kai didn't recognize what it was, the fruit he was given last was definitely something extraordinary. At the very least, this fruit was a spirit-grade top-rank ingredient which contained a very rich yang qi. One such fruit would be enough for someone with Yang Kai's cultivation to completely restore themselves. Eat up? There's nothing wrong with it? Yang Kai smiled and stuffed one of the plates into Linger's hand. After having her true qi and spiritual energy both sealed and spending a number of days living in fear, Linger really did need to replenish her strength. So she immediately accepted and began eating. Yang Kai also began stuffing his face, quickly sweeping away everything in front of him, not even letting the pit of the fruit go, swallowing it directly, adding a few drops of yang liquid to his dantian in the process. Over the next few days, people would come and deliver food to Yang Kai's cell, which were all heavenly delicacies. Yang Kai had already adjusted to this new environment, and after these past few days, not only had his injuries completely healed, his strength had also improved slightly. This place was simply a cultivation paradise for the true Yang secret art. Whenever Yang Kai and Linger received these meals, the demon race people on either side of them became particularly unhappy. They were all prisoners in the same prison, but the difference in treatment was as different as heaven and earth, causing all of them to wonder just what kind of connection Yang Kai had with the clan that occupied this mysterious small world. In the cell on the left, the demon race person who had first spoken to Yang Kai had thought the latter would soon be killed, but after so many days, not only had the people here not found any trouble with him but instead continued to offer him various benefits, leaving him practically speechless. Roughly 5 days later, Yang Kai, who was meditating in his cell, suddenly felt an unstable Yang attribute energy fluctuation in the air, seemingly emanating from somewhere in the distance. Wrinkling his brow, Yang Kai tried to examine what was going on, but was unable to discover anything useful. On the other hand, the demon race people in all the cells all wore dignified expressions as soon as they felt the strange energy fluctuation, all of them going silent as uneasiness filled the air, as if this energy fluctuation marked the coming of some kind of disaster. What happened to them? And Linger huddled closer to Yang Kai and whispered. Yang Kai shook his head, his expression also becoming solemn. The clatter of footsteps could soon be heard as a number of people rushed into the prison from the outside and immediately grabbed a number of demon race people, dragging them kicking and screaming from their cells. But with their strength completely sealed, there was no way these demon race people could fight back effectively, and soon they were all knocked down and brought out. After dragging these prisoners out, the doors to the cells were locked again. Those who still remained began to clamor and curse, but obviously no one responded to them. Enough! All of you shut up. You think shouting is of any use here? In the cell to the left of Yang Kai's, the demon race man who had spoken to Yang Kai before called out. Soon after, everyone fell silent. Seeing this, Yang Kai glanced over at this man curiously. Apparently this guy had some fame and prestige amongst the demon race, or else the others here wouldn't have so easily obeyed him. After roughly the time it would take to burn a stick of incense, the unsteady energy fluctuations gradually subsided and eventually faded away. A somber mood fell over the prison as all of the demon race people inside became noticeably low-spirited. Yang Kai's eyes flashed as he thought to himself that these captives should know more about what was going on. Perhaps he could acquire some useful information from them if he could just get them to talk. A day later, someone once again brought food and wine, but this time Yang Kai didn't stuff his meal down immediately, but instead took a jug of wine over to the demon race man on his left and said in as friendly a tone as possible, "Do you want to share a drink? This wine isn't half bad." Amidst the darkness, a pair of eyes slowly opened and glanced over at Yang Kai. A moment later a snort ringing out, revealing a sense of disdain and ridicule. "Although I'm human and you're a demon, and the relationship between our two races has never been friendly, but where I come from we have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What do you think?" Yang Kai continued his attempt to persuade this man. In response, the man slowly took back his sneer and contemplated for a while before saying, "Humph. You humans are infamous for your treachery, but at least you don't seem too hateful." Saying so, he stood up, walked over to where the two cells met, sat down and took the jug of wine from Yang Kai's hand and drank it down. A few breaths later, after watching him swallowing down the jug of wine, Yang Kai handed this man another. Seeing him act so subservient, the demon race man couldn't help nodding while disdainfully snickering. "I despise you, humans, the most. You all act servile to those stronger than you, yet boast arrogantly in front of those weaker than you. A sinister and deceitful bunch. Heh." Yang Kai didn't get angry and simply handed over the jug of wine. "Drink first, we can talk later." The food and drink disappeared quickly after that. The demon race man stopped constantly making insults, but the way he looked down on Yang Kai with utter scorn didn't change from beginning to end. "Is there something you want to ask?" The man grumbled, obviously having seen through Yang Kai's intentions from the start. Yang Kai simply smiled and first gave his name to his neighbor before saying, "I haven't asked friend's name yet." The man frowned, seemingly reluctant to report his name, but after considering for a moment he bluntly said, "Go Che." Hearing this name, Yang Kai showed no reaction, but the nearby and Linger couldn't help crying out in shock as she covered her mouth in surprise. Yang Kai turned to look at her. "Are you really Go Che?" And Linger stared at the demon race man in disbelief. "Good. My God. You're actually Go Che. How come you're stuck in this prison then? Is he someone famous?" Yang Kai asked and Linger curiously. Go Che snorted as he curled his lips. "Human brat. Originally I thought you were somewhat clever. How come you suddenly look so ignorant?" "Sorry. I've never heard of you." Yang Kai smiled faintly. And Linger licked her red lips and whispered, "Although I have heard the name Go Che, he is not actually that famous. The famous one is his father, one of the 4 demon generals, Go Cheong." "Your old man is a demon general?" Yang Kai was also shocked. The title Demon General was one Yang Kai was unfortunately quite familiar with. Back in the ash-gray cloud evil lands, evil cavern Yang Kai had killed a demon general's soul clone. It was only after coming to Tong Xian realm, though, that Yang Kai learned of the terrifying strength each demon general possessed from Shui Ling. "My old man is my old man. I am me." Go Che seemed unwilling to borrow his father's name and reputation. "If you have such a powerful father, how could you have been caught and imprisoned here?" Yang Kai asked, somewhat dumbfounded. Go Che squinted as he glared at Yang Kai for a moment before sighing heavily. "A series of unlucky coincidences. In any case, let's not talk about that. When I get out of here, I'll rally together enough soldiers to raze this place to the ground." "May your wishes come true," Yang Kai casually said before finally getting to the main point. "How much do you know about this place?" "Not much." Go Che shook his head and no longer rejected Yang Kai outright as he had previously. Perhaps agreeing with the sentiment that his enemy's enemy was his friend, or perhaps thinking he could somehow use Yang Kai to help him escape from this predicament. "We only know that the people here call themselves the Sun Clan." They seem to have once belonged to the human race, but because of the secret arts they cultivate and that damn divine tree of theirs, their physique is now somewhat different from ordinary humans, so they gave themselves a new name. Divine Tree. Xianxia frowned and vaguely remembered hearing that name when he first woke up. If he wasn't mistaken, the Sun Clan clansman who brought him to the hall said he would turn him into nutrients for the Divine Tree if he didn't cooperate. And it's the root of their Sun Clan. Didn't you see a giant tree when you first came here? The Yang attribute energy being so rich in this place is all because of that divine tree. If not for it, how could our demon chi be so strongly suppressed? The energy flowing through demon race cultivators was called demonic chi, which was equivalent to the true chi which flowed through human cultivators. After listening to Go Che's story, Xianxia shook his head slowly. He really hadn't seen this divine tree before, probably because he and Enlinger had entered this mysterious small world from a different entrance. The divine tree is a strange entity that can generate Yang attribute energy all on its own. However, recently, for some unknown reason, it seems to have become somewhat unstable. In order to keep the divine tree healthy and stable, the Sun Clan people here began catching people from the outside, and the only entrance to this mysterious small world is in my demon land, so those they have caught all come from my race. Strange. How did the two of you get here? There's more than one entrance to this place. We accidentally came in through one of them, Xianxia explained casually. No wonder. Go Che nodded lightly before continuing. You must have felt the unusual energy fluctuations just now. They occur when the divine tree becomes unstable. Whenever that happens, they take some of the people they've captured here and use their blood and flesh to nurture and comfort the divine tree. So those few who were taken just now, they're dead, Go Che sneered. And it won't be long before it's our turn. I'm sure you can see. There aren't many people left in here. Xianxia's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. There were only 1 or 2 people left in the cells adjacent to his, and it was likely there weren't many in the other cells as well. Every time the divine tree's instability appeared, they had to take several of them to act as blood sacrifices, so it was obviously it wouldn't be long before everyone in here was dead. The Sun Clan, always abducting demon race cultivators from the demon land, was bound to attract attention after so long, so it was likely the demon land was now on guard against them so as not to let them succeed so easily anymore, meaning a fresh supply of bodies couldn't be expected. The fruit you ate a few days ago came from their divine tree, Go Che frowned and explained. Seeing how you ate that thing so happily, and considering the annoying feeling that comes from your aura, you should cultivate a Yang attribute secret art, right? Xianxia nodded lightly. Then you can relax for a while. Before everyone else here is killed off, they probably won't touch you. Their divine tree is especially fond of people like you, so I'm sure they're saving you for last, Go Che said, obviously taking some pleasure in Xianxia's misfortune, his menacing smiling giving Enlinger the chills. Many thanks for your consideration. Xianxia cupped his fists and replied. Go Che just snickered before turning his attention to Enlinger, sweeping his eyes over her body wantonly before saying meaningfully, Brat, if I were you, I would enjoy myself while I can. You have such a beauty nearby, yet you haven't even touched her. Could it be you have problems down there? That's not good. You can't disappoint her like that. As soon as Go Che said this, the other demon race captives burst out into a fit of laughter. Xianxia's face went black and suddenly felt like this guy was somewhat off-putting. Enlinger, on the other hand, did her best to cover herself while shooting a hateful glare towards Go Che and hiding herself behind Xianxia. Since talking to Go Che that day, Xianxia gained a slight understanding of his current situation and began making some psychological preparations. After getting a taste of wine after who knows how long, Go Che became somewhat shameless. Whenever the Sun Clan came to deliver food, he would always take 2 jugs of wine from Xianxia. Xianxia didn't mind though and simply shared without any complaints. After getting along for a dozen days or so, Go Che's attitude had become more temperate, and although it wasn't as if he was treating Xianxia like a sworn brother, he at least mellowed his insufferable arrogance. The only thing that continued to frustrate Xianxia was how Go Che always egged him on regarding Enlinger, each time causing the naive young woman to turn beet red and cling to Xianxia to hide her embarrassment. Being imprisoned here, while constantly on edge, not knowing when they would be dragged off and executed, had caused the already unruly demon race cultivators to completely let loose and seek for some kind of entertainment anywhere they could. In the past 10 days, Xianxia felt the unstable yang attribute energy fluctuations coming from the divine tree twice. Both times, several of the demon race prisoners were taken out, never to return. As the days went by, the number of demon race cultivators in the cells continued to dwindle and the moods of those who were left behind grew even heavier. Their time of death was not far away, and everyone was aware of it. The atmosphere was incredibly gloomy, with only Xianxia and Wuxia capable of looking forward, neither of them seeming to be worried, as if they didn't care whether they lived or died. Xianxia spent most of his time cultivating, not missing any opportunity to improve his strength. He knew that the day he was taken out from this place, he'd have to fight a difficult battle. In this mysterious small world, to survive, he knew he would have to kill. If that is the case, then sharpening his blade at any opportunity he can was the best thing he could do right now. Below the Saint Realm, he didn't put anyone in his eyes. If anyone provoked him, he could directly release his soul-devouring insects and turn this mysterious small world into a mass graveyard. Presumably, the leaders of the Sun Clan wouldn't be able to accept such an outcome, which would give Xianxia an opportunity to sit down and bargain with them. Therefore, he didn't have any reason to panic. But this was his biggest trump card, and he wasn't prepared to expose it until the last possible moment. 2 months passed by, and basically every 5 days, a group of people would be brought out from the prison. But as more time went by, Xianxia felt that the frequency of the Divine Trees episodes was increasing. There were already very few people left in the dungeon. With the exception of Xianxia and Enlinger, only Wuxia and his cellmates were left. The next time the Divine Tree acted up, it would be their turn. This feeling of impending death unnerved even the normally calm Wuxia. One day, while drinking with Xianxia, Wuxia suddenly said, "Friend, you look like a real man. If death is really imminent, would you not resist?" "Do you think I have the ability to resist?" Xianxia chuckled. "They didn't seal your true chi. Your chances are at least better than mine." "Well, if it comes down to it, it certainly won't just sit still and wait for death." "Good. When the time comes, I'll help you. If you really can escape from this forsaken place, please bring a message to my father. Tell him about this place and what happened here so he can take revenge for me." As he spoke, Wuxia's expression became fierce. "I have to let these bastards know my demon race is not to be trifled with." Xianxia glanced over at him thoughtfully, faintly thinking that this hoodlum should still be hiding some methods, or at least was still capable of putting up some resistance. However, it seemed like whatever methods he had were very limited. From how he spoke, it didn't seem like he had any hope of escaping. With his help, maybe there really would be a chance to escape, Xianxia thought to himself. As they were talking though, a familiar energy fluctuation filled the air. Xianxia, Wuxia, and Enlinger's eyes flashed, each of them falling into a temporary daze. "It's time." Wuxia took a deep breath and said. The divine tree had become unstable again, and now, besides them, there was only one other demon race cultivator left in this prison. They would certainly be chosen this time. Dang 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 dang. The sound of hurried footsteps came from outside, and with a loud bang, several Sun Clan clansmen burst into the prison. The leader of this group was the man who had previously lifted the seal on Xianxia's true chi and spiritual energy. His expression this time could only be described as gloomy. After arriving, he waved his hand and several of his clansmen immediately opened the 2 cells. "Boy, your time of death has arrived," the man said coldly. "Wasting so many of our resources and living so comfortably for so long. I want to see just how much return you'll pay." As he spoke, he once again sealed Xianxia's true chi before turning to his clansmen and ordering, "Take them all." Wuxia and his fellow demon race cultivator both suddenly let out muffled grunts as they received several punches and kicks and were dragged out of their cell. On the other hand, Xianxia and Enlinger didn't resist and were spared such unpleasantries. Walking along the prison's dark corridor, Wuxia seemed to be somewhat unwilling to cooperate, so it was stop and go for a while, resulting in several whippings. As a result, when the group finally made it out of the prison, Wuxia was a bloody mess. But he was still stubbornly resisting, spewing curses from his mouth as he struggled against his captors. The master from the Sun Clan simply sneered in response. Go on, curse. Curse like there's no tomorrow. 'Cause there isn't. Son of a demon general? Humph, you're nothing but a dead man walking. No one will come to rescue you. If you have the guts, let me go. As soon as I return, I'll rally soldiers and lead my father's army back here to annihilate you all, Goche yelled. Idiot! The man spat disdainfully. As Goche spoke, he continuously shot glances towards Yang Kai, seemingly urging him to act. But Yang Kai just kept indicating that now was not the time. Right now was when the surrounding masters were wariest. Even if he was at full strength, Yang Kai couldn't guarantee he could escape successfully, so how was he supposed to do so when his true chi and spiritual energy were sealed? He had to wait for an opportunity to release his soul-devouring insects and take a large number of Sun Clan clansmen hostage first. After seeing Yang Kai respond this way several times, Goche stopped signaling to him and instead began staring suspiciously, wondering what the strange human brat was thinking. As the group walked forward, the Yang attribute energy fluctuation also grew stronger and more unstable. The Sun Clan clansmen seemed to be in a hurry and were constantly urging Yang Kai and the others to walk faster. A short time later, Yang Kai came to an open space where there was nothing within a 1,000-meter radius beside a giant golden-colored tree that's canopy seemed to stretch into the clouds. Yang Kai could sense that all the Yang attribute energy in this place was being generated from this giant tree. It was almost like a giant umbrella, its huge canopy stretching out in all directions, radiating so much Yang Qi that it formed a thin, film-like barrier that subsequently covered the region where the Sun Clan people lived. As soon as he arrived, the true Qi in Yang Kai's body showed some signs of movement, and soon after, the seal which had been placed on him was silently destroyed. Yang Kai's eyes flashed with shock. He had never thought such a strange tree could exist in this world. This giant tree was obviously the Sun Clan's divine tree, the foundation of their race. Because of the secret arts the Sun Clan cultivated, as long as they remained near this divine tree, their strength will rapidly increase. Unlike Yang Kai, who needed to constantly search for Yang attribute precious treasures and auras just to cultivate. This was simply a paradise Yang Kai could only dream of. Staring up at the huge divine tree, Yang Kai spotted a number of fruits hanging from its branches. These fruits were the same as the one Yang Kai had eaten soon after waking up in this strange, mysterious small world. Some of them were mature while others seemed to still need more time before ripening. Not far from the roots of the divine tree, the Sun Clan's elders were waiting, and upon noticing Yang Kai and the other prisoners' arrival, they turned around and stared with expectant eyes. Soon after, the divine tree seemed to give off some unusual fluctuations, as if trying to convey a message of desire, releasing a wave of pure Yang attribute aura that transformed into several visibly ropes which wrapped around Yang Kai. Seeing this scene, all of the Sun Clan elders' spirits roused. The old leader smiled and nodded as he muttered, "It looks like the divine tree likes this human. Thank the heavens, with this human, the divine tree should be able to stabilize for a while, giving us enough time to find some new nutrients. Being able to become the divine tree's nutrients is your life's greatest honor." The master who escorted Yang Kai and the others here sneered. "Doesn't seem like it to me." Yang Kai replied flatly, but made no attempt to free himself from the energy ropes the divine tree had wrapped around him. These Yang Qi ropes not only didn't restrict Yang Kai's movements, they actually gave him a feeling of comfort. Glancing around, Yang Kai saw that not far in front of himself was a pile of bones and earth that had been dyed red by blood. Obviously, these were the remains of the demon race cultivators who had previously been brought here. This sea of bones and blood was quite shocking at first sight, and Linger Pretty Face went pale, thinking that she would soon join this mass grave. Her heart couldn't help filling with panic. Seiche Kacha. As they were pushed forward and stepped, the bones beneath their feet cracked and crumbled, releasing a somewhat gruesome sound. Goche roared as his eyes gradually turned red and filled with anger. The aura around his body became violent and dangerous. The blood and bones here were all left behind by his clansmen. Naturally, Goche felt enraged. As he approached the divine tree, Yang Kai's expression gradually became strange, He felt as if the divine tree was trying to convey something to him, but was unable to decipher it, causing him to sink into contemplation. Soon, the group of prisoners was brought before the divine tree. The Sun Clan didn't seem to want to waste any time, all of them eager to start the blood sacrifice to appease the divine tree. The old leader stared at Wuxia and bluntly commanded, "Start with him." Immediately, someone came over and knocked Wuxia to the ground. "Kid, if you don't act now, when will you?" Wuxia suddenly yelled at Xianxia, his body swelling up as he spoke, his physique filling with a kind of explosive power that easily smashed through the seals with just his demonic chi. Without hesitation, Wuxia thrust his hand towards the nearest Sun Clan clansman's heart, trying to strike him to death. None of the Sun Clan present even batted an eye though, instead staring at Wuxia as if he were some kind of idiot. The old leader simply waved his hand and Wuxia's movements froze. No matter how the latter tried, he simply couldn't move. Sweat dripping down his forehead. Unwillingness filled Wuxia's red eyes, but in the face of absolute power, there was nothing more he could do. "You think by risking your life you can put up some kind of last-ditch struggle?" The leader chuckled. "Foolishness? Do you think I would give you any such chance? You old bastard." Wuxia gnashed his teeth and cursed, the veins on his forehead nearly popping out, not losing hope as he continued to push his demonic chi but still unable to free himself from this predicament. Wuxia's strength wasn't low, already arriving at the third-order transcendent realm, but in front of a Saint Realm Master, he still couldn't put up any kind of resistance. On top of that, this place was right below the Sun Clan's divine tree. The ambient yang chi was incredibly rich, harshly suppressing Wuxia's demonic chi. Even the weakest Sun Clan clansman in the same realm could easily beat him here. "Kill him!" the leader shouted somewhat impatiently. The two Sun Clan guards who had dragged Wuxia here sneered as they raised their hands, their true chi surging as they prepared to cut off their prisoner's head. "Wait!" Seeing Wuxia's head about to roll, Xianxia suddenly shouted, "Boy, what do you want?" The old leader turned to look at Xianxia sullenly. "Don't tell me you want to take his place and die first?" As soon as this statement came out, Wuxia's expression also became somewhat confused. Xianxia simply grinned. "Sorry, my relationship with him isn't nearly that good. Whether he lives or dies has nothing to do with me." "Then why did you open your mouth just now?" "I just thought I might have a way to resolve your problem and appease your divine tree." Xianxia smiled lightly. All the Sun Clan clansmen present wore unpleasant expression upon hearing this. The old leader coldly glaring towards Xianxia as he said, "Boy, you know to talk big, I'll give you that. But if you dare try to stir up trouble here, I'll make you suffer a fate worse than death. Whether I'm boasting or not, you can determine after letting me try. In any case, you have nothing to lose," Xianxia said, shrugging lightly. In the next moment, true chi surged out from Xianxia's body. "You?" The master who had escorted him here stared in disbelief, unable to understand how this boy had so easily broken through the seals on his strength. "Don't look so surprised. It's not that I have the ability to break through your seals. It was the divine tree that helped me." Xianxia smiled as he pointed at the energy ropes still tied around him. "Strange." The man shook his head in confusion. "Now then, do you want me to try? To be honest, if you want to kill us all now, I have no opinion. At worst, I'll die a quick death. But if you let me try, you might receive an unexpected surprise. And, well, even if it doesn't work, it won't be too late to kill us then. It's your decision." Seeing him look so calm, seemingly indifferent to whether he lived or died, the Sun Clan's elders became somewhat hesitant. The most important point here was the divine tree's behavior. They had never seen the divine tree entangle someone like this before. Not even the strongest members of their Sun Clan had experienced such a thing. As such, Xianxia's words had some credibility to them. Perhaps it was as he said, and he could give them some unexpected surprises. The crowd whispered amongst themselves for a moment before all of them turned their attention to their leader. The old man sunk into contemplation for a moment, his eyes staring at Xianxia with some distrust but eventually nodding as he said, "This old master will allow you to try, but you must first tell us what you plan to do. There's no way to describe it. You'll just have to watch and see." Xianxia smiled, ignoring the unfriendly stares of the surrounding Sun Clan clansmen as he walked forward. If you dare damage the divine tree, I will pull out your soul and torture you for all eternity, the old leader threatened coldly. Xianxia secretly snorted, not caring at all about the old man's threat. In front of everyone's eyes, Xianxia walked over and stood before the giant divine tree. Both Guoche and Enlinger secretly clenched their fists, neither of them knowing what Xianxia was thinking. Standing beside the divine tree's roots, Xianxia's brow wrinkled slightly as he slowly extended his hand and pressed it against the tree. The instant he touched it, his body shook. The divine tree in front of him was simply a gigantic treasure. The divine tree had so much yang attribute energy stored within it. It was difficult for Xianxia to even fathom. It was as if yang qi flowed through the tree's trunk like a raging river. It was to the point where he listened carefully, Xianxia could actually hear sound of the flowing yang qi. Xianxia's expression changed greatly, wondering just what kind of height his strength would grow to if he could absorb this massive amount of energy. However, he quickly shook his head. This was the Sun Clan's divine tree. In front of so many masters, it was simply impossible for Xianxia to absorb any energy from it. If he even tried, he would become a corpse in the next moment. As Xianxia stood there, all of the Sun Clan's masters had their divine senses locked onto him. If he made any kind of suspicious movement, they would ruthlessly kill him. However, Xianxia's performance was quite tactful as he simply investigated the divine tree, nothing more. After some time passed, many of the Sun Clan began to show impatient expressions because the fluctuations coming from the divine tree had not decreased in the slightest. Xianxia also no longer wasted any time, instantly smashing the seal on his spiritual energy and then sending his soul avatar into the trunk of the divine tree. Inside the divine tree, Xianxia's soul avatar found a golden world filled with yang qi so rich, it turned into a liquid and flowed like a mighty river. Xianxia's soul avatar swam through this river, tracing it back to its source. After a little hard work, Xianxia arrived at a mysterious space. This space was somewhere inside the divine tree and, strictly speaking, should be its core. In front of Xianxia's avatar, he discovered an unusual energy formation that seemed to be quietly floating within the golden river. This energy formation exuded an astonishingly hot aura that was subtly different from its surroundings. As he watched, Xianxia saw this energy formation pulse slowly, giving it the appearance of a great, beating heart. Seeing this, Xianxia couldn't help feeling shocked. There is always a reason when there is change. When he had first arrived before the divine tree and the latter had taken the initiative to reach out and contact him, Xianxia had a faint idea what was going on, and now that he had seen this massive energy, he became certain about his speculations. At the same time, Xianxia thoroughly understood what the bouts of restlessness the divine tree had were about. The Sun Clan were unclear about the actual situation and could only provide the divine tree with nutrients in the form of blood sacrifices. Letting out a long sigh, Xianxia continued to stare at the energy mass in front of him for a while. This energy formation continued to pulse as it revealed a sense of eagerness and intimacy towards Xianxia. This energy formation was still in a state of chaos, but Xianxia believed that if it was given enough time and enough nourishment, it would form a complete consciousness. The world was truly vast, even giving birth to such a strange life form. Xianxia had encountered the Jade True Spirit and the Bone Ray Skeleton before, which were similarly strange existences, and now he had come across this divine tree which, from the looks of it, was in the process of evolving into a completely new life form, transforming from a mere plant to a sentient being. This energy formation at the heart of the tree was actually a gathering of spiritual energy, and once it completed its evolution, it would become something akin to the divine tree's soul. Xianxia was deeply surprised, never having thought a tree could actually reach such a step. The occasional riots of the divine tree weren't because it had contracted some kind of illness or because it was on the verge of death, but because its evolution required a massive amount of energy. It was rooted here, so there weren't many nutrients it could absorb from its surroundings, so whenever it needed more, it would unconsciously cry out. That was also why, when the Sun Clan offered it blood sacrifices, the divine tree would settle down for a while. After eating and drinking enough, it naturally became stable. However, such a method wasn't a cure for the problem, so it would inevitably start complaining again after a period of time. causing the Sun Clan no small amount of worry. The amount of energy the divine tree needed for its evolution was too large, but judging from the increasing frequency of its riots, Xianxia felt that it wouldn't be long before it succeeded. Xianxia quickly figured out what was going on, but what he didn't know was how much the Sun Clan knew. It was reasonable to say that they could understand the situation by simply sending one of the soul avatars into this place, but from their uneasiness and urgency when it came to the divine tree's riots, it seemed as though they were clueless about what was really happening. Xianxia couldn't help feeling confused about this. The only way to solve this mystery would be to ask. Thinking so, Xianxia quickly took back his soul avatar. Just as he opened his eyes, Xianxia heard many angry voices coming from the Sun Clan's masters, all of them seemingly growing impatient, anxious to sacrifice Wuxia and his companion to calm the divine tree. "What are you all so worried about?" Xianxia squinted at them and said faintly, "I just finished my investigation and came up with a plan." "Wait a moment longer." The leader of the Sun Clan stared at Xianxia coldly as he declared, "I'll give you the time it takes to boil a cup of tea. If you can't calm the divine tree by then, all of you will die here today." "A cup of tea," Xianxia chuckled, "should be enough." Saying so, Xianxia soared up into the sky and hid himself in the divine tree's dense canopy, disappearing from everyone's line of sight. The Sun Clan masters weren't worried though. Even if they couldn't see Xianxia, their divine senses were still watching every move he made. Atop the divine tree's huge trunk, Xianxia arrived at a spot he estimated was the location he had encountered the energy formation. Stretching out a finger, Xianxia opened a small crack in the trunk. Immediately after, Xianxia condensed a drop of yang liquid at his fingertip and dropped it into the crack. The drop of yang liquid directly penetrated into the tree and disappeared. Although he appeared calm on the surface, Xianxia's heart was pounding as he wasn't certain his plan would work. What he was doing right now was something he had just come up with on the spot, so there was no guarantee it would have any effect at all. Xianxia still remembered back when he was first beginning to cultivate that he had grown several yang attribute fruit trees by using his yang liquid, so he knew his yang liquid had such a growth-promoting effect and that the effect was quite significant. A spirit fruit tree which should have taken several years to grow and produce fruit had fully matured within a month after absorbing a single drop of yang liquid. Right now, this divine tree's evolution required a massive amount of energy, and a drop of yang liquid was undoubtedly the best choice for this. On top of that, Xianxia's yang liquid was very different from the past. The energy contained within a single drop was dozens of times greater than before. Perhaps this could satisfy the divine tree's requirements. If it couldn't though, Xianxia would have no choice but to give up. Waiting silently, Xianxia felt a great sense of tension, not because he was afraid to confront the Sun Clan in a fight, but because he was full of expectations. He was looking forward to seeing what kind of role his yang liquid could play here and just what the divine tree's evolved, sentient form would be like. Suddenly, the fluctuations coming from the divine tree became much more intense, as if the drop of yang liquid had greatly stimulated it, and it was now going on a rampage, throwing the surrounding area into a state of chaos. "Boy, what have you done?" Among the Sun Clan masters who were waiting down below, one of them immediately roared angrily upon seeing this and flew up towards Xianxia, intending to execute him. "Wait!" This time, it was the Sun Clan's leader who called out, his brow wrinkling deeply as he examined the situation. "Leader, that brat definitely tried to harm the divine tree. Please let me immediately kill him." "I told you to wait." The leader glanced at this man and declared in a domineering tone, shutting the ladder up instantly. Up in the canopy, Xianxia heard the noise down below, but paid it no mind, instead wearing a happy expression. The divine tree was rioting now not because it was upset but because it desperately wanted more of his yang liquid. Its rioting was its way of begging for more. The crack Xianxia had previously opened actually split apart even further all on its own. The divine tree seemed to think that by doing so it would be able to obtain more benefits. Its consciousness was currently in a state of ignorance, just like an unborn child. It could vaguely sense what was going on in its surroundings, but couldn't distinguish what much of it meant. This crack opening on its own was a subconscious reaction it took. Xianxia grinned and fed the divine tree another drop of yang liquid into the trunk from his fingertips. A moment later, the rampaging aura of the divine tree became much more stable. This time, everyone from the Sun Clan couldn't help showing strange expressions, the old leader's eyes flashing a cold yet expectant light. As time passed, the aura of the divine tree gradually became calm, as if an invisible hand had gently been lulling it to sleep. Everyone waited with anticipation, and soon enough, Xianxia jumped down from the divine tree, his face pale and sweat dripping from his forehead. After landing, Xianxia sat down without a word and began circulating his secret art. No one dared to disturb him, and even the Sun Clan clansmen held their breaths as they waited quietly, wondering just what kind of method he had used to successfully comfort the divine tree. Goche and Enlinger were both stunned but soon let out sighs of relief. They knew that this time they had managed to escape from the jaws of death. After some time, Xianxia slowly opened his eyes, his complexion somewhat better but obviously still quite weak, the true qi in his body seemingly severely depleted. His expression was also quite gloomy, and it was apparent he wasn't in a good mood. This was no act, Xianxia really was in a foul mood. This time, in order to provide the divine tree with enough energy, he had actually fed it 20 drops of yang liquid. This was a big loss. "Boy, what did you just do?" The Sun Clan leader quickly asked. "How were you able to comfort the divine tree? Do you think I'll tell you?" Xianxia sneered. "Brat, you'd best start talking. If you don't, we'll let you taste the world's finest torture." Someone immediately threatened. Xianxia slowly shook his head and replied back in a defiant tone. "Do whatever you want. This time's comforting was just a temporary fix. If you don't want to completely solve your divine tree's problem, you can beat me all you'd like. I promise you, if one hair on my head is harmed, the next time your precious divine tree goes on a rampage, I'll definitely stand by and watch." Xianxia's fearless and defiant attitude caused the Sun Clan to hesitate. The old leader smiled strangely and maintained a neutral attitude while cynically saying, "Boy, your courage isn't small. Do you think we'll be so easily intimidated? You only have one life. You should cherish it more. Obeying us is your only option here." Xianxia just glanced over at the old leader indifferent and said nothing, stubbornly refusing to cooperate. Now that he had finally seized the initiative, Xianxia's best option was to remain silent. Once the Sun Clan learned what he had done, they would likely treat him as a long-term nutrient supply for the divine tree and force him to continuously manufacture yang liquid to water it. That was not an outcome Xianxia wanted to see. However, listening to their tone, Xianxia faintly felt that they really didn't know the divine tree was evolving, causing him to frown. It wasn't until after a moment of reflection that Xianxia suddenly understood. He was able to learn the truth because his soul avatar had broken into the divine tree's interior to examine it. But the Sun Clan's soul avatars obviously couldn't replicate this. Within the divine tree's trunk was an intense flow of yang qi. Once any of their soul avatars entered, they would likely be burned to death. They didn't have Xianxia's conflagrated knowledge C, which could ignore that scorching heat. Considering all this, Xianxia's last worries disappeared as his courage inflated again. As long as the Sun Clan didn't know the truth of the matter, Xianxia could firmly grasp the initiative in their negotiations. The Sun Clan leader stared deeply at Xianxia, his brow furrowed as his expression became somewhat gloomy, only after a while smiling and nodding. "If you don't want to explain, then so be it. I'll have plenty of chances to figure it out." This place was their home turf, and his cultivation was much higher than Xianxia's, so naturally the old leader felt Xianxia couldn't be able to conceal his methods for long. Xianxia simply shrugged his shoulders and remained indifferent. "Because you have the ability to comfort the divine tree, you still have some value, so we won't be killing you today. But I warn you, don't try to play any tricks. You won't be able to afford the consequences." Xianxia chuckled and finally spoke. "You can feel relieved. I understand my own worth. As long as you don't harm me or my companions, I'll cooperate with you." "You're an interesting one, boy." The leader smirked. Xianxia's adaptability had gained the old man's approval. "But before that, I have a few requests I hope you can fulfill. Don't reach out for a yard after taking an inch. You don't have the qualifications to discuss any conditions with us. It seems you really don't understand your own position." The old leader coldly snorted, his expression becoming gloomy again. I'm not asking for myself, but for your divine tree. If you want your divine tree to be restored as quickly as possible, it's best if you hear me out. If you don't want a thought, that's also fine. The Sun Clan cultivators all frowned as they stared at Xianxia distrustfully. Speak, the old leader said calmly. First, starting today, I want all of your Sun Clan clansmen to stop absorbing yang qi from the divine tree. If you want to cultivate, do it far away from this place. Why? I can only say that this has something to do with the riots of the divine tree. Xianxia replied perfunctorily. The divine tree's evolution required a massive amount of energy which Xianxia was no supplying in the form of yang liquid. The last thing he wanted was for a portion of that to be absorbed by the Sun Clan, further increasing his consumption. What kind of joke is that? With just one sentence you want our entire clan to stop cultivating? A Sun Clan master shouted. It's up to you to decide. I don't care either way. I'm just making the suggestions. How long do you want us to stop? The Sun Clan's leader asked. Xianxia frowned and asked, How long ago did your divine tree start acting up? The old leader calmly replied, It has been about 3 years, though it was not very obvious in the beginning. But as time passed the episodes became more and more frequent. Xianxia nodded lightly. If what the old man said was true, then the evolution of the divine tree had started roughly 3 years ago, which was similar to Xianxia's own estimates. Since that was the case, as long as he could at least maintain the current conditions, it shouldn't be long before the divine tree finishes its evolution and obtains sentience. If my guess is correct, then you'll only have to endure this situation for at most a year. Half a year or even less is possible though. Acceptable. The old leader nodded and agreed to Xianxia's request. With him agreeing, none of the other Sun Clan masters raised any objections. Enduring for a year wasn't a big deal for them. Second, I need something to supplement my true qi, preferably those fruits from the divine tree. The more the better, Xianxia said lightly. Hearing this second condition, all the Sun Clan present wore sour expressions. The old leader even laughed. The more the better? Do you think that the fruit of the divine tree is easy to come by? Every fruit here has been grown for several hundred years. Even I don't have the opportunity to take one so easily. Do you think you have the right to obtain such valuable treasures? Aren't there a lot right here? Xianxia's expression dimmed. These people were really too stingy. There were obviously a few dozen fully matured fruits hanging from the divine tree, their aroma stimulating Xianxia's appetite even now. These are the accumulated wealth of my clan's thousands of years' worth of effort. How could we let some outsiders take them? The leader old said bluntly. Fine, it doesn't have to be these fruits. Yang attribute spirit grasses, herbs, fruits, or pills are also fine. You shouldn't be lacking those too, right? Xianxia said impatiently. Xianxia wasn't about to be a shorn sheep. Since he was providing yang liquid for the divine tree's evolution, naturally the Sun Clan should supplement his consumption. You all saw just now, in order to soothe your divine tree, I had to expend all of my true qi. If I don't have something to help me supplement my consumption, how am I supposed to restore myself? To this argument the old leader could only nod reluctantly. Good, what you say makes some sense. We'll give you something to supplement your true qi. You don't need to worry about this point. Third, stop while you're ahead. Our patience is limited. We won't allow you to keep naming conditions so wantonly, the old leader said unhappily, directly interrupting Xianxia's words. Xianxia sneered back in response. I just wanted to say that since you have a need for me, shouldn't you give me a better living environment? I can't escape from this place anyways. Is there a need to keep me in your dungeon still? Fine. My female companion, N, and these 2 demon race friends of mine, if it's convenient, let them live with me as well. Goche couldn't help but glance over at Xianxia in surprise, his expression showing some signs of gratitude. Very well. The old leader was obviously becoming impatient and didn't wait for Xianxia to continue before saying, The conditions you proposed, I can satisfy, but if you can't meet my clan's expectations, you should understand. I'm very clear about that. Xianxia nodded lightly, his face filled with a bright, carefree smile. Take them away and have someone fulfill his requests. The old leader waved his hand and quickly said, The master who had previously escorted Xianxia and the others here came over and immediately took them away. After they had left, one of the elders from the Sun clan wore a gloomy expression as he muttered, "This little brat is so rude, daring to make so many demands. Why did you agree to his conditions? Me promising him is my own decision. Besides, he only asked for some trivial things. This is just until we figure out what means he used. The next time he comforts the divine tree, I'll be watching him closely. Send someone to monitor them, especially that young human boy. I want to know everything he does from now on." "Yes." Inside a small palace, Xianxia's group of 4 people settled in. After arranging accommodations for these 4, the Sun clan man who had led them here promptly left. However, both Xianxia and Guoche knew that there were many powerful masters lurking about just outside, their divine senses and scrupulously monitoring them. Obviously, there was no chance of them escaping right now. Having moved into a comfortable environment after just escaping death, everyone in the group felt some lingering fear, especially Guoche and the unknown demon race cultivator. They didn't understand why Xianxia had even bothered to save them. Inside one of the rooms, the 4 people gathered together and Guoche stared at Xianxia with a complicated expression, hesitating several times before finally asking the questions on his mind. In response, Xianxia simply smiled and said, "There's no particular reason. All of us are in the same situation, and saving you 2 didn't take any extra effort, so I just decided to do so. Does Brother Guoche need any other explanation?" Guoche wore a stunned expression as he scratched his cheek, suddenly saying in a firm tone, "No matter what, this time, I, Guoche, owe you my life. I will not forget this kindness. In the future, if the opportunity arises, I will certainly repay this grace. This time, if it weren't for Xianxia interfering, he would most certainly have been turned into a sacrifice by the Sun clan. Brother Guoche is too serious." Xianxia faintly waved his hand. "Us being able to leave here is another matter altogether. If things don't go well, we may still die here. If such a time comes, we'll just have to fight it out with them. We'll deal with that when the time comes. Good, this palace is big enough, you 2 find a place to stay for now. There won't be any danger in the short time. I need to hurry and restore myself. Then I won't disturb brother any longer. Rest well," Guoche said before quickly leaving together with his fellow clansmen. And Linger, on the other hand, didn't leave and just stared at Xianxia with her beautiful pair of eyes, a thoughtful expression upon her face. "Need something else?" asked Xianxia. "You lied," and Linger said bluntly. "I know you're not kind enough to save Guoche for no reason. You must be plotting something. Beauty, haven't you ever heard of silencing others for knowing too much?" Xianxia grinned evilly. "Stop it. I know you won't do anything to me." And Linger spat disdainfully, rolling her eyes at Xianxia's act she had seen too many times already, lowering her voice as she continued to ask, "What scheme do you have? What are you trying to get from him?" "Nothing," Xianxia smiled. "What I want is his gratitude. What good is that to you? Here, his gratitude can't save you. In here it really can't save me. But what about outside?" Xianxia gave her a meaningful look. "Outside?" And Linger's brows wrinkled, obviously not comprehending what Xianxia was implying. "Idiot!" Xianxia slowly shook his head. "It's said that women with big chests don't have any brains. It seems to be true." "I..." And Linger turned bright red and quietly looked down at her towering peaks, gritting her teeth as she mumbled, "How are they big? They certainly don't look small, and you've developed quite nicely," Xianxia said with an obscene look upon his face. "Rogue! Shameless!" And Linger shouted angrily, her skin flushing crimson. Inside the palace, after Xianxia painstakingly explained, and Linger finally understood what he was after. If his guess was right, after escaping from this mysterious small world, the place they would appear would be the Demon Land. The Demon Land was naturally ruled over by the demon race, and since ancient times, humans and demons had been enemies. In Tongxian realm, with the exception of the central neutral zone, once members of the 2 races met, there would inevitably be a battle. If 2 humans like Xianxia and Enlinger suddenly appeared in the middle of the Demon Land, They would surely encounter the chase down of the demon race, and even if they possessed heaven-defying abilities, they wouldn't be able to safely escape. However, with Go Che's help, it would be a different story. This guy's father was Demon General Go Cheong, a man whose hand could cover the sky in the demon land. As long as they could obtain the latter's shelter, Yang Kai and Enlinger wouldn't have to worry about losing their lives at least. Therefore, Yang Kai was trying his best to earn Go Che's gratitude right now. Hearing this, Enlinger stared at Yang Kai with a scornful look. You want to depend on something as flimsy as gratitude? Is your brain filled with flowers? Yang Kai snorted back. I'm just thinking farther ahead than you. Of course, all of this first depends on us being able to leave this place. If we can't escape from this mysterious small world, even if that delinquent Go Che becomes my sworn brother, it wouldn't do us any good. Do you think we can leave? Enlinger narrowed her eyes and bit her lip anxiously. I don't know. It'll depend on our efforts from now on. Yang Kai shook his head helplessly. Right now, he didn't dare make any guarantees. He could only say he would do his best. I wonder what state the Holy Land is in. Enlinger sighed faintly. Saintess Aunt Nan suddenly becoming like that meant that the old Holy Master must have fallen, which meant that the entire Holy Land had probably become a mess. I don't know about your Holy Land, but I fear your 3 Saintess sisters are more unfortunate than fortunate. Ah! Enlinger's beautiful face paled as she called out in alarm. Thinking about it now, she felt that what Yang Kai said was very possible. Because they cultivated the same secret art, Saintess Aunt Nan could easily find the other saintesses' positions. Enlinger had just barely escaped thanks to Yang Kai and the Void Corridor, but her 3 sisters would likely not have such luck. There were no Saint Realm Masters in the teams escorting the saintesses, so none of them could possibly resist the attack of a second-order saint. In all likelihood, Saintess Aunt Nan had killed 1 or more of the other 3 before coming for Enlinger. Yang Kai's words had instantly wiped away all the joy Enlinger felt from surviving their most recent disaster, causing her mood to sink to its lowest point yet. Well, just pretend I didn't say anything. The situation might not be that bad. Yang Kai fumbled for his words as he secretly regretted opening his mouth just now. To him, it was just something obvious which didn't make any difference to him. But to Enlinger, it was obviously nothing short of a tragedy. This is all your fault. Just as I was starting to feel better. Enlinger glared at Yang Kai before turning around and running out. Yang Kai shook his head helplessly while reminding himself to not be so talkative in the future. The Sun Clan kept their word and soon after moving Yang Kai and the others into their new housing, delivered a number of Yang attribute pills. In this place, the ambient Yang attribute energy was incredibly rich, so it was naturally suitable to the growth of spirit herbs of the same attribute. The Sun Clan apparently also had their own alchemists who could refine these herbs into pills. There was a total of 10 bottles, each with 10 spirit-grade low-rank pills inside. Although these pills weren't too high-end, they also weren't too bad. 10 bottles of spirit-grade low-rank pills took less than half an hour for Yang Kai to consume, essentially compensating for the Yang liquid he had just used. However, Yang Kai obviously wasn't satisfied just making up for his loss. He wanted to use this opportunity to extract as many benefits as he could from the Sun Clan. After all, he would likely have to comfort the Divine Tree many times in the future with his Yang liquid. How could a trivial 10 bottles of pills satisfy him? Waiting 3 days so as not to cause too much suspicion, Yang Kai once again asked the Sun Clan for more pills, causing the eyes of the Sun Clan guards who were monitoring him to nearly pop out of their sockets. 10 bottles of 10 pills each was enough for any one of them to use for several months, but this human race brat had actually spent just 3 days to consume them all. However, as he was under their constant supervision, they also understood that Yang Kai had not secretly hidden or destroyed these pills. He hadn't taken a half step outside the palace, nor did he have any kind of storage artifact on him, so naturally it was impossible for him to have misappropriated these pills. After cursing him out for a while, the guards finally brought 10 more bottles of pills to Yang Kai, repeatedly emphasizing that he had to use them sparingly. Even for their Sun Clan, it wasn't easy to refine so many cultivation pills. Yang Kai nodded solemnly while secretly sneering, swallowing these pills like beans the moment the guards left. He could refine spirit-grade low-rank pills at will now, so even just eating them casually as snacks they wouldn't last more than 2 days. It could only be said that the level of the Sun Clan's alchemists was too low. Time passed day by day, and the Sun Clan thought that after this most recent unusual comforting, the divine tree would remain stable for quite a while, but after only 5 days, the divine tree once again began releasing unstable energy fluctuations. When he noticed this, Xianxia quickly prepared himself. Sure enough, only a few breaths later, someone came and escorted him to the divine tree. This time, Linger and the others didn't follow and instead remained in the palace. Beneath the divine tree, the Sun Clan masters gathered around their leader, all of them waiting anxiously. After seeing Xianxia arrive, all of their divine senses locked onto him, apparently wanting to take this opportunity to figure out what method Xianxia was using to soothe the divine tree's rioting. In response, Xianxia wore a casual expression, not displaying a single hint of nervousness. Xianxia didn't care about them spying on them because in this world, besides him, no one else could do what he was about to do. As such, he really wasn't worried about anything. When he arrived, Xianxia didn't bother speaking any nonsense and simply leapt up into the divine tree's canopy, found the crack in the great trunk he had split open last time, and began feeding it drops of yang liquid. Each drop of yang liquid represented the entire amount of true Qi Xianxia's physique, with the exception of his dantian, could contain, which meant that each drop of yang liquid, given the current size and toughness of his meridians, contained an incredible amount of pure yang qi. Even so, each time a drop of yang liquid was fed to the divine tree, it would easily be absorbed, dispersing and disappearing almost instantaneously. The energy fluctuations from the divine tree became even more violent as it tried to convey its desire for more. However, Xianxia wasn't in any rush and continued to steadily feed the divine tree one drop of yang liquid after another, gently soothing it. All the Sun Clan's masters stood close by and observed, but were ultimately unable to understand what was happening, causing each of them to frown. Although they could sense a massive amount of energy suddenly appearing every now and then, it would disappear just as quickly in the next moment, denying them an opportunity to investigate. Watching this process repeat itself, all of their brows wrinkled deeply. Many of them wanted to move closer to get a better look, but hesitated out of concern that they would annoy Xianxia, causing him to stop cooperating with them. After about half an hour, the divine tree's aura settled down once more. Xianxia then sent his soul avatar into the divine tree to inspect its condition and quickly discovered that the energy formation which formed the latter's core had become more solid and slightly less chaotic in nature. Nodding with satisfaction, Xianxia figured that it wouldn't be long not before this energy formation finished evolving and gained sentience. When Xianxia leapt down, the Sun Clan immediately noticed that his condition was the same as last time. His face pale and all the true qi drained from his body. Glancing around at each other, they nodded approvingly. Regardless of how Xianxia was comforting the divine tree, from his performance, it was obvious to them he was at least giving it his all and not cutting any corners, something the Sun Clan wanted very much to see. After allowing him to recover for a moment, they walked over to him. The Sun Clan's old leader called out, "Boy, I heard that you consume pills very quickly. Do you take my Sun Clan for fools?" Xianxia slowly opened his eyes and panted lightly, struggling to argue back. "I indeed consumed many pills, but although I had some small gains, the one that ultimately benefits is your divine tree. I'll tell you this right now, 99% of the energy I absorbed from those pills was returned to your divine tree. Having just seen what I did, I think all of you are clear about this point. Are you really going to care about some insignificant benefits I gain in the process?" The old leaders of the Sun Clan narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. Although he felt that there was something wrong with Xianxia's explanation just now, he also couldn't definitively refute them. "I might as well take the opportunity to mention this to you then, and you had best take what I say seriously. I need more pills, many more. Otherwise, the next time your precious divine tree acts up, I can't guarantee that I'll have enough true qi to comfort it." Hearing his rude request, the Sun Clan masters all wore gloomy expressions. Xianxia's attitude was so brazen and arrogant that they couldn't help feeling uncomfortable and annoyed. "If it really is for the divine tree, I can provide you with what you need, but your rate of consumption is too high. If this lasts too long, I'm afraid our alchemists won't be able to keep up, the Sun Clan leader calmly said. If there aren't enough pills, just give me herbs instead. I'll refine them myself. Yang Kai compromised. Do you understand alchemy? The Sun Clan's leader looked at him with some shock. That's none of your business, Yang Kai bluntly stated. Fine, after having them prepared, I'll have the appropriate materials delivered to you. The Sun Clan's leader nodded before asking, Right. Why did the Divine Tree's riot come so quickly? Shouldn't you explain this to us? What's there to explain? You couldn't have thought that after I comforted it last time your Divine Tree would no longer riot. Did you? Of course not. I just felt that the cycle should have been longer. Idiot. Yang Kai sneered. The faster these bouts come, the better. Only after reaching a certain frequency will it stop altogether. In fact, if possible, I hope to come here every day to appease instead of waiting for its riots to appear on their own. Come here once a day? The gathered masters all showed puzzled expressions. Very well, I agree to your request. Rest assured, as long as you single-mindedly assist the Divine Tree, my Sun Clan will not treat you poorly. We will even give you some benefits. Since you cultivate a Yang attribute secret art, perhaps my Sun Clan will have some martial skills and auxiliary techniques which will be useful to you. As if appreciating Yang Kai's sincerity, the Sun Clan's old leader's expression became more temperate and started throwing out some casual words of praise. Yang Kai smiled happily on the surface while spat disdainfully in his heart. From what he had seen of these people so far, he knew they only considered him a slave laborer. Even if they delivered him any martial skills or secret arts, they would only be low-grade things. Regarding such things, Yang Kai wouldn't spare a glance. In the mysterious small world, time passed by uneventfully. Go Che and the other demon race cultivator had nothing to do all day. With their demonic chi and divine senses both sealed, they couldn't even cultivate, so they had both grown incredibly bored out of their mind. It was the same for Enlinger as a young woman. She had a more tranquil temperament, and was less troubled by the current circumstances. Instead, she listlessly spent most of her time in a daze. Compared to them, Yang Kai was very busy. The Sun Clan sent him a large quantity of spirit grasses and spirit herbs, which Yang Kai then refined into pills before promptly swallowing them down to cultivate. On top of that, every day he would go to the Divine Tree to feed it a few drops of Yang liquid, causing his schedule to be quite full. The quality and grade of the Sun Clan's herbs were very good, allowing Yang Kai to put the many sentiments and insights into alchemy he had been piling up into practice, subsequently improving his overall skill, delivering gratifying results. The Sun Clan's masters were constantly monitoring Yang Kai's movements as well, but no matter how much they observed, they couldn't completely understand what bizarre method he was using to appease the Divine Tree. Also, since Yang Kai began visiting the Divine Tree daily, it had never had another bout of erratic energy fluctuations. All the Sun Clan clansmen were extremely happy about this, thinking that this human boy was really somewhat useful and secretly rejoicing they hadn't just lopped off his head. The only thing that made them unhappy was that Yang Kai consumed too many of their precious spirit herbs. He was like a bottomless pit that no amount of cultivator resources could fill. If Yang Kai's movements weren't under constant surveillance, they would surely have interrogated him about this point several times already. In the blink of an eye, for months had passed by. On this day, after Yang Kai fed several drops of Yang liquid to the Divine Tree and sent his soul avatar into its trunk for his customary inspection, he couldn't help smiling happily. The once chaotic energy formation inside the trunk was now pulsating regularly, like a butterfly that was just about to break through its cocoon, a sense of vitality literally radiating from it. Moreover, after sensing the arrival of Yang Kai's soul avatar, it subtly tried to reach out to him. It seemed as though it was trying to communicate with Yang Kai but didn't know how to express itself clearly. Yang Kai's spirit rose as he knew this was a sign the Divine Tree's evolution had reached its most critical juncture. At this speed, it would be only another month or two before its consciousness fully formed. At that time, it would become a true sentient life form. After quietly comforting it for a while, Yang Kai took back his soul avatar and jumped down weakly from the trunk. After a short break to restore himself, he spoke to the nearby Sun Clan elder. From tomorrow onward, I want to live here. Live here? The Sun Clan elder asked with a clear look of surprise. There are some things I'm concerned about. I'd like to be as close as possible to continuously observe your divine tree, so instead of running back and forth all day long, it will be more convenient to just live here. Also, that way, if something does happen, I can respond right away. It's no problem to live here, but boy, why do I feel like you're plotting something? The Sun Clan elder stared at Xianxia with distrust. I'm aware of my situation. Impose whatever kind of supervision you deem necessary. You're just thinking too much anyways. Xianxia chuckled. As long as you understand your place, boy. However, I have to check with leader first. The elder spat. I'll await the good news then, Xianxia casually said before getting up and walking towards his temporary residence. When Xianxia arrived back at the palace and told Enlinger about his plan to move to the divine tree, the young woman suddenly became somewhat nervous. If you leave, what should I do? Wuxia and his friend are still living here. Xianxia couldn't help frowning as he remembered this point. Although Wuxia had behaved well so far, there was no guarantee that without Xianxia's asylum, he wouldn't take an interest in Enlinger. Even if Wuxia didn't act rashly, there was still another demon race cultivator living here. The demon race was originally a violent and cruel people who tended to act as they pleased, not a group who would simply obey if told to do or not to do something. You'll just have to come with me. I'll tell them I need someone to take care of my personal needs. They won't make a fuss over something so trivial. Xianxia thought for a moment and said, And Enlinger nodded quickly, her expression relaxing. The next day, the same Sun Clan elder came to the palace and told Xianxia that the old leader had agreed to his request. Xianxia also took the opportunity to mention Enlinger. The elder only thought about it for a moment before nodding. There was no need to consult the clan leader about such a minor matter. After briefly informing Wuxia about what was happening, Xianxia left the palace together with Enlinger. Beneath the divine tree's towering figure, Enlinger settled in. The Sun Clan did not allow her to fly up into the divine tree's canopy like Xianxia, only allowing her stand nearby and observe. However, this made no difference to Enlinger. As long as she didn't stray too far from Xianxia, she felt relieved. She knew that she was safe right now only because Xianxia was sheltering her. Without him, she would either have become a blood sacrifice or a plaything for the Sun Clan. Two endings she simply couldn't accept. High up atop the divine tree, Xianxia dripped a few drops of yang liquid from his finger into the crack before he began to observe the reaction of the energy formation. Like yesterday, the divine tree tried to communicate with him, but was still unable to express itself clearly. Xianxia sent out spiritual energy pulses meant to comfort the divine tree's core from his soul avatar, trying to calm it down while also teaching it to better express itself. As an unexpected side effect, after supplying yang liquid to the divine tree for so long, it now seemed to be quite dependent on Xianxia. So when the latter comforted it, not only did it immediately settle down, it also unconsciously expressed a sense of happiness. As time passed, everything remained calm and peaceful. When he wasn't trying to soothe and communicating with the divine tree, Xianxia spent his time accompanying Enlinger. In order to ensure that the divine tree could evolve as soon as possible, Xianxia didn't dare to circulate his true Yang's secret art, lest he absorb energy from it and delay the process. The changes the divine tree was undergoing went unnoticed by everyone except Xianxia, who was communicating with it regularly. The chaotic energy formation now seemed to have reached a saturation point and was obviously on the verge of some unimaginable transformation. One day, roughly a month after Xianxia and Enlinger began living beneath the divine tree, when Xianxia once again sent his soul avatar into the trunk, a soul fluctuation burst out from the divine tree's core, conveying a profound sense of happiness, as if it had been waiting for a long time for him to come and was overjoyed with his arrival. At that moment, Xianxia clearly felt that a tiny consciousness had been born in the energy formation in front of him. With a look of shock on his face, Xianxia carefully released his divine sense and slowly inspected the heart of the divine tree. The moment his divine sense touched the divine tree's heart, the latter released a burst of hot aura that instantly wrapped up Xianxia's soul avatar. From the depths of the divine tree's heart, a faint sound seemed to resound, almost like the babbling of a baby that was happily squirming in its parents' arms. Yang Kai immediately felt slightly uncomfortable. Thankfully, he possessed a powerful conflagrated knowledge C. Otherwise, his soul avatar would have been reduced to ash after being wrapped in the hot aura the divine tree had released. Quickly passing his thoughts to the divine tree, the aura wrapping him silently withdrew, although it was clearly somewhat unwilling to do so. Yang Kai couldn't help laughing at this development. He felt that the divine tree was completely indistinguishable from an ignorant baby and was instinctively approaching someone it thought was close to it. At this moment, it shouldn't have fully evolved but was essentially only a step away from gaining sentience. Recognizing its sense of loss, Yang Kai quickly appeased it, causing the divine tree's core to once again become lively. After spending 2 hours comforting and playing with it, the divine tree's heart gradually stabilized and seemed to fall into a deep sleep, no longer giving off any soul fluctuations. Yang Kai breathed a sigh of relief and took back his soul avatar, an incredible sense of exhaustion soon overcoming him. Yang Kai felt that dealing with this life form, which had yet to fully evolve, was more difficult than fighting against a Saint Realm master. It was completely ignorant of everything and could only express itself to Yang Kai by wildly throwing about its emotions. In order to avoid the Sun Clan becoming aware of what had transpired here, Yang Kai had to continuously coax this wild child, causing him to expend a great deal of spiritual energy. However, this situation was somewhat outside of Yang Kai's expectations. The reason why he had begun feeding his yang liquid to the divine tree was simply to buy time, lest he, Linger, and the others be used as blood sacrifices by Sun Clan. As a secondary concern, he had wanted to take a look at what the divine tree's evolved form would look like. Never had he thought that by providing his yang liquid and using his divine sense to soothe it, the divine tree would develop a sense of dependence and trust towards him. Perhaps it mistakenly believed Yang Kai was its family. This was similar to how some creatures, when just being born, would treat the first face it saw as its parent. The divine tree's current state could only be described as thus. Although Yang Kai wasn't certain about any of this, whatever the case was, it probably wasn't a bad thing. After resting for a while, Yang Kai gradually recovered. After playing together for so long, the divine tree also seemed to have become exhausted. As a result, over the next few days, whenever Yang Kai sent his soul avatar into its trunk, its core would remain silent. It took more than 5 days for it to once again wake up. This time, its consciousness was a bit clearer, and not only could it play together with Yang Kai's soul avatar, it also managed to convey some vague information to him. These bits of information, or rather thoughts, were still quite garbled, and Yang Kai wasn't able to figure out most of what it meant, but it was almost as if he was listening to someone talk to themselves, expressing a sense of curiosity about everything around themselves. Yang Kai could only smile helplessly and accompany it, trying to help whenever he could. Spending time like this was both physically and mentally exhausting. Time continued to pass by. The Sun Clan masters came every day to observe the situation and would inevitably confirm that Yang Kai wasn't playing any tricks and that there were no significant changes occurring to the divine tree, or so they thought. The divine tree would wake up every few days, and each time it did, its soul would become more and more complete. Then, after playing with Yang Kai to its heart's content, it would fall back asleep, living a truly carefree life. Soon, though, the periods of time the divine tree would fall asleep grew shorter. In the beginning, it would sleep for 5 days straight before waking up, but this gradually became 4 days, then 3, then 2. The messages it conveyed from his soul also gradually became clear, and Yang Kai knew that the consciousness of the divine tree's evolution was about to be completed, filling his heart with a great sense of expectation. Yang Kai continued to converse with the heart of the divine tree, helping it to perfect its consciousness. After repeating this process many times, Yang Kai began treating the divine tree as a real sentient being. It had its own emotions and judgments now and couldn't be considered just a towering tree any longer. As a result of their interactions, the divine tree became closer and closer to Yang Kai, completely opening its heart to him without any reservations. Its current consciousness was still on the level of an ignorant and naughty baby. Every time Yang Kai's soul avatar came to visit, it would show great joy, often grabbing him and dragging around inside its trunk, as if taking him on a tour of its body. Its thoughts right now were quite simple. In short, it was a white sheet, unstained by anything, fully expressing its emotions innocently, without the slightest deception. It would be happy when Yang Kai came, and sad and reluctant when he left. Many times, even if it was in a state of deep sleep, its spiritual energy would reach out and tightly wrapped itself around Yang Kai's soul avatar, refusing to let go. This made Yang Kai very happy as well, such purity causing him to feel somewhat ashamed of himself. As it playfully communicated with Yang Kai, the divine tree's awareness also grew rapidly. One day, when Yang Kai sent his soul avatar into the divine tree's heart, a thought so incredible was transmitted to him, welcoming him. Soon after, the divine tree's consciousness rushed over, hovered in front of Yang Kai, and hugged him intimately. Yang Kai was dumbfounded by this sudden development and only tried to convey a message to the divine tree after quite some time. He didn't expect, though, that within a single breath, a response would be given to him. Although this thought was still somewhat unclear, at the very least, Yang Kai could figure out what the divine tree was trying to convey to him. Yang Kai grinned happily. The consciousness of the divine tree had finally fully formed. After such a long time feeding it with his yang liquid, the divine tree had successfully evolved into a sentient life form. Yang Kai had made great contributions to the birth of this life, and although it would have reached this point on its own, the time required would have undoubtedly been significantly longer. A strong sense of accomplishment suddenly welled up in Yang Kai's chest. It was as if he was watching a child he had been taking care of finally stand up and take a stumbling step forward. However, the divine tree still had much to learn. Yang Kai immediately began sending his thoughts to the divine tree's consciousness, teaching it how to better express its emotions and communicate properly with him. However, this little guy was too naughty compared to studying these things. It seemed more interested in playing with Yang Kai, refusing to sit still and learn for any significant length of time. After a long time chasing it around, Yang Kai took back his soul avatar from the divine tree and rubbed his somewhat sore forehead. A moment later, though, many branches suddenly curled towards Yang Kai, and at the same time a message was passed to him in the form of a spiritual energy communication. Yang Kai was stunned as he looked at the branches that were extended towards him, noticing that each of them had a golden fruit hanging from them. "Are you giving these to me?" Yang Kai asked after thinking about it for a moment. The branches trembled light in response, the divine tree's way of nodding. Yang Kai smiled and shook his head before replying, "I appreciate your intentions, but I can't accept these fruits." He was still being monitored by the Sun Clan's masters. If he was to accept these fruits now, it would only bring him trouble. Even though Yang Kai had constantly been drooling over these fruits filled with rich yang qi since the moment he laid eyes on them, he had never even tried to pick any of them. But how could Yang Kai have known the divine tree would be so stubborn, continuously extending its branches towards him as if vowing to never give up unless he accepted its gift? No matter how Yang Kai tried to persuade it, nothing worked, and in the end, the divine tree made the fruits fall from its branches before shoving them into his arms. Yang Kai's face immediately went black, unable to think up a way to explain away this situation. As for the divine tree, like it had just accomplished something great, its branches swayed back and forth as if it was celebrating. Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he stared at the 7 ripe fruits he could neither keep nor discard in his arms. After thinking about it, Yang Kai decided to take what came, jumped down from the trunk, and called out to the nearby Sun Clan masters. Immediately, several Sun Clan powerhouses who had been monitoring Yang Kai came over to see what the matter was. But upon seeing their precious fruits in the hands of this little human brat, they immediately became enraged. "Boy, you dare to steal the fruit of the divine tree. You must be seeking death." One of them roared as his bristled with anger, looking as if he would attack in the next moment. Yang Kai simply turned to this man and coldly replied, "I didn't steal them. They just fell off." "Bullshit. Even if the divine tree's fruit full ripens, if it is not picked, it can remain hanging for 100 years without issue. Your ability to spout nonsense is truly awe-inspiring, you little bastard. I told you I didn't steal anything. If I really had stolen them, I would have eaten them already." Yang Kai was too lazy to explain anything to them and simply tossed the fruits over to the nearby masters. The few Sun Clan clansmen hastily caught these fruits, gloomy expressions filling their faces. The man who spoke just now quickly came to his sense though and coldly snorted. Don't think that you can escape punishment for your crime. We will report what happened here to leader. What your fate will be decided by him. Yang Kai simply spat disdainfully, not caring in the slightest. At that moment though, a horrifying energy suddenly welled up and an aura of hostility filled the air. Before anyone could understand what was going on, numerous golden whips lashed out towards all of the Sun Clan masters. When they noticed the approaching crisis, each of the Sun Clan's masters' expressions changed greatly and they hastily tried to dodge. Unfortunately for them, these attacks were not only fast, they were incredibly numerous, so none of them were able to escape, each of them being struck multiple times before they could even comprehend what was happening. Pa pa pa. A series of sharp impacts rang out and all the Sun Clan masters were violently thrown back, blood leaking from their wounds. Facing these rapid attacks, none of them was able to put up any kind of resistance. One of the less powerful Sun Clan cultivators was directly turned into a bloody fog, not even his bones remaining. Yang Kai was startled by this sudden development while Enlinger hastily hid behind him, her tender body trembling as she stared at this gruesome scene in utter shock. The Sun Clan masters who had just been flung through the air didn't even have enough time to pick themselves up before a second barrage of golden whips descended upon them. And even though they could see these attacks approaching them, they still weren't able to resist this indiscriminate bombardment. Pa 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 pa. The lashing sounds rang out endlessly and every Sun Clan cultivator received no less than 100 strikes to his body. In the blink of an eye, all 5 of the remaining masters had been beaten to death. Yang Kai turned back and stared at the huge divine tree behind him with astonishment. At that moment, there was not the slightest wind. Yet all of the divine tree's leaves rustled madly, its thick and dense branches swaying back and forth as if in a fit of rage. From the crown of the divine tree, a golden radiance so dense it could be seen with the naked eye appeared and then condensed into long, thick whips. The dead Sun Clan cultivators were struck once more by these golden whips. Broken bones and pieces of flesh were scattered about as a rich bloody smell filled the air. Yang Kai clearly felt the divine tree's violent, near hysterical anger. Apparently it had become enraged because of these people's attitude towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai was completely dumbfounded, never having expected such a development to occur. He had only handed those fruits over to the Sun Clan thinking he could spare himself some trouble. After all, he was still not sure he could escape from this place. He didn't even know where the exit was. Although he knew better than anyone that the divine tree had gained sentience and was now a completely different existence than before, he hadn't anticipated it would launch such a vicious and powerful attack simply because he had been treated poorly. The divine tree's attacks lacked any kind of rhyme or reason and could only be described as it randomly lashing out with its enormous stores of energy. However, that was still more than enough. Yang Kai? Enlinger stuttered, shivering quite noticeably as she clutched his clothes tightly. His beautiful eyes filled with confusion. Upon hearing Enlinger call out to him, Yang Kai came to his senses and quickly conveyed his thoughts to the divine tree, soothing its raging anger. Receiving this comforting, the golden energy whips which hung from the divine tree's canopy finally stopped their assault, picked up the fruits which had fallen to the ground, and delivered them back to Yang Kai. Why does it look like it has its own consciousness? Enlinger's thoughts were in a state of chaos as she stared at the divine tree behind her. Where should I even begin? Yang Kai smiled bitterly. In the time it took for this brief exchange between Yang Kai and Enlinger, the divine trees recalled all its golden whips, plucked every ripe fruit on its body, and angrily shoved them towards Yang Kai. There were 60 or 70 in all, each one containing an unimaginable amount of Yang attribute energy. Yang Kai took a deep breath before letting out a long sigh, feeling the situation was now beyond redemption. The divine tree had acted purely out of goodwill towards Yang Kai just now and had not even hesitated to kill several people just to help him. However, this violent attack had also given Yang Kai a big pleasant surprise. The Sun Clan cultivators who had been nearby just now were all transcendents, but not one of them had been able to resist the indiscriminate bombardment of the divine tree. His eyes flashing a cold, sharp light, Yang Kai's mouth gradually curled into a grin. This was perhaps an excellent chance. I'm going to destroy the seals binding you. After that, defend yourself, Yang Kai quickly said to Enlinger, swiftly sending his true chi and divine sense into her body. The seals in Enlinger's body were nothing in Yang Kai's eyes, but he had not previously undone them to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. But now that the situation had developed to this point, there was no point in trying to remain low-key anymore. In the blink of an eye, Enlinger felt that her long stagnant true chi once again began to flow and the barrier around her knowledge sea shatter, completely restoring her freedom. The next moment, from all directions, countless figures flew over. The rampage of the divine tree just now had obviously alarmed the Sun Clan, and they were now rushing over in order to investigate. As soon as they arrived and saw the broken and bloodied bodies lying on the ground, the Sun Clan masters became infuriated. None of them bothered even asking what had happened and simply directed their murderous intent towards Yang Kai, their true chi subsequently welling up in preparation to attack. Seeing this, Yang Kai simply let out a light chuckle before storing all the divine tree's fruits into the black book space, and then releasing a powerful pulse of spiritual energy, which hid an innumerable number of soul-devouring insects in it. During the ice sect incident, Yang Kai had already tested the power of the soul-devouring insects and knew that anyone below the Saint Realm would be unable to resist them. The first group of Sun Clan cultivators to arrive were not weak and were significant in number, but there was no Saint Realm master amongst them. The shockwave of spiritual energy impacted all of these newcomers, and although it didn't cause them any direct injuries, it allowed Yang Kai's soul-devouring insects to silently penetrate the former's knowledge seas. This meant that in the short term, Yang Kai could attack and destroy their knowledge seas as he pleased. At the same time Yang Kai moved, the divine tree also launched a violent attack, tossing around its golden whips wildly, carving up the surrounding ground with its chaotic barrage. Rumbling sounds rang out as the newly arrived Sun Clan cultivators suffered tremendous damage, none of them able to even approach Yang Kai before they were swept up by the divine tree's attacks, the less fortunate ones dying instantly. Taking in the situation around him, Yang Kai wore a dignified expression. A tyrannical pressure suddenly spread from the distance and rapidly approached, the Sun Clan's old leader and elders appearing before Yang Kai a moment later. Leader, something is very wrong with the divine tree. One of the cultivators who had survived the divine tree's last assault quickly yelled. The old leader wore a sullen expression as he observed the divine tree, a cold light flashing across his eyes as his gaze moved to the nearby Yang Kai, a trace of shock mixed in with his anger. The other Sun Clan elders' performances were worse as they called out in amazement. How can this be? They were all Saint Realm masters, so with their powerful divine senses it was not difficult for them to detect the soul fluctuations coming from inside the divine tree. On top of that, they could clearly feel this consciousness disgust towards their prying eyes. It seemed to harbor a strong hostility and was firmly rejecting them. The divine tree, it has a consciousness now. The old leader's eyes narrowed as he stared at Yang Kai's face and asked in a solemn voice. Yang Kai grinned back at him. You guessed it. Is this your doing? I can't take the credit here. I just helped it along. Yang Kai shook his head. And because of that it treats you kindly yet rejects my clan? The old leader was an experienced and worldly person. So although he didn't know the full story, seeing the scene before him, he quickly inferred the truth of the matter. A newly born consciousness would always be kind to the one whom it was familiar with. The divine tree is my clan's sacred object. You damn thief! The Sun Clan's old leader roared angrily. I didn't want to steal it. It just happened to grow close to me. What do you want me to say? Back then, I should have just killed you. As he spoke these words, the old leader felt a deep sense of regret, while the other Sun Clan masters gnashed their teeth as they glared hatefully towards Yang Kai. And you should have, but now you can't, Yang Kai declared, his face filled with confidence. If you really think so, you're gravely mistaken. The Sun Clan's leader smiled grimly. A trivial first-order transcendent dares act so arrogantly in front of this old master. You simply don't know how high the heavens are." Saying so, a potent spiritual energy suddenly burst forth from his mind. Yang Kai didn't even have time to react before a sharp thorn pierced his knowledge sea, causing him an indescribable amount of pain as if his very soul was being torn apart. His expression twisting in an instant as his body trembled and large drops of sweat rolled down his forehead. What this old man's true cultivation was had always been a mystery, but at that moment, when Yang Kai suffered an attack from him, the pressure he felt was no less than when he faced Saintess Nan. This old man was at least a second-order saint. The divine sense attack from such a master was something even Yang Kai couldn't ignore. His knowledge sea-tossing violently made Yang Kai feel nauseous and unsteady. At the moment the old leader released his divine sense attack, several of the other Sun Clan elders quickly launched their own killing blows towards Yang Kai. The divine tree's branches immediately fell from the sky, and before these strikes managed to land, wrapped up Yang Kai and Enlinger, who was supporting the ladder, bringing the pair to the top of its canopy. Enlinger cried out in shock, but by the time she came to her senses, she and Yang Kai were already atop the divine tree's trunk, shielded from the outside by a large number of tightly woven branches. At the same time, the energy whips which hung down from the divine tree's crown shot forward to intercept the approaching Sun Clan masters. Facing this storm of attacks, the expressions on all the Sun Clan elders' faces changed dramatically. None of them had anticipated such a development. When they wanted to chase after and kill Yang Kai, they were blocked by the divine tree, and since they were concerned that they might damage the foundation of the Sun Clan, they had no choice but to fall back. "Leader, the divine tree seems to be sheltering him," one of the masters said with an ugly look upon his face. "I know." The face of the old leader also clouded over and became especially complicated. The divine tree was not only sheltering this thief but even attacking their clansmen. What was worse though was that the attacks from the divine tree were no less powerful than those of a Saint Realm master. Obviously, it wouldn't be easy to break through its defense. A great sense of shame and unwillingness filled the Sun Clan leader's heart. This feeling was like watching the baby he had raised since birth for a lifetime suddenly being stolen away by a shameless thief, yet the baby happily accompanying him. "It doesn't matter. That brat shouldn't live long after taking my attack." The old Sun Clan leader coldly snorted, letting out a long breath. With his cultivation, killing a young man like Yang Kai was as easy as pinching an ant, so he was convinced that Yang Kai wouldn't be able to withstand his previous blow. As soon as said that, low laughter resounded from the top of divine tree. All of the Sun Clan elders wore expressions of shock as they turned their gazes towards the source of the laughter, only to see Yang Kai step out somewhat unsteadily from a sea of branches, his eyes red with rage. "He didn't die?" The Sun Clan leader's brow furrowed as he muttered unconsciously, "Impossible! Even if this human race boy had an extremely high-grade soul-type artifact to assist him, such a young man couldn't possibly have resisted the previous divine sense attack." Also, the old man saw that Yang Kai's consciousness was somewhat blurry still, so there was no doubt the latter's soul had suffered damage. Yet somehow this boy was still alive. Dong dong. Dong dong. A dull, rhythmic pulsing sound suddenly came from the divine tree, immediately gathering everyone's attention. The divine tree's newborn consciousness seemed to have nearly gone crazy because of the injuries Yang Kai had suffered, and an aura filled with anger and hostility, stronger than anyone had imagined possible, began radiating out from it. Even Yang Kai, whose head was still throbbing in pain and had even passed out for a brief moment, froze up in shock, discovering he had still been underestimating the divine tree. Centered around the roots of the divine tree, the earth began to crack open, and a rich and powerful yang attribute energy rushed out, incinerating everything in the surrounding. Even the masters from the Sun Clan had to protect themselves with their true chi in order to resist this aura, their skin soon turning a dark shade of red from the excessive heat. The branches of the divine tree danced wildly through the air, and the energy whips hanging from its canopy lashed about randomly, filling the air with crackling noises. The huge divine tree swayed left then right then back again, gradually becoming faster and faster as it did. After a few breaths of time, in front of everyone's astounded eyes, the divine tree, which had been rooted here since before the Sun Clan's ancestors arrived in this mysterious small world, actually split the earth and extended pillars of yang attribute energy similar to human legs from its trunk, lifting its huge body off the ground and stepping forward its roots, each glistening with a brilliant golden radiance, joined the energy whips hanging from its canopy and began attacking the surrounding dumbfounded Sun Clan masters. Ha 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 ha! Yang Kai Hand held his forehead and laughed loudly towards the sky. There had been so many things he hadn't expected this time around. The divine tree actually possessing such ability was something he never even considered. The wounds he had suffered to his soul didn't concern him much because with the 6-colored soul-warming lotus assistance, it wouldn't take long for them to heal. As long as he didn't suffer an attack that could instantly smash his knowledge sea and destroy his soul, Yang Kai had nothing to fear. This was something the Sun Clan leader obviously didn't know. Unlike his carefree celebratory mood, all the Sun Clan masters felt as if they were losing their minds as they watched the divine tree lumber towards them while unscrupulously attacking, forcing all of them to hurriedly retreat. After allowing the divine tree to vent its anger for a while, Yang Kai gently comforted it. "It's all right now. You've given them enough of a lesson." Yang Kai saw that the divine tree's actions were quite clumsy. Although it had incredible strength, it was somewhat unrealistic to expect it to actually kill the Sun Clan's top-level masters. The latter only needed to withdraw a certain distance in order to ensure their safety. Also, it was only because of the divine tree's importance to the Sun Clan that these masters had not attacked Yang Kai, seemingly afraid of harming the former. Now having the divine tree's shelter, Yang Kai's first thought was to quickly leave this place. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. After being soothed by Yang Kai, the divine tree calmed down and became much more stable. However, it still waved his golden whips around, as if warning the Sun Clan not to get any closer. "Little thief, if you get down here and beg for mercy, I may still spare your life, but if you wait until my clan seizes you, you'll have no such opportunity," the Sun Clan's old leader shouted as his face twisted with rage. "Oh no, I'm so scared." Yang Kai stood on the trunk and cried out in a frightened voice, doing his best to further antagonize the surrounding crowd. "Do you think you can escape? Wishful thinking. You dare confuse my clan's divine tree. Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the world, I will shred your corpse into 10,000 pieces. Stop farting out of your mouth already." Yang Kai grinned defiantly. And Linger, who was behind Yang Kai, still hadn't quite adapted to their current situation and was in a state of confusion. But upon hearing Yang Kai's words, she couldn't help but laugh. Yang Kai glanced back at her and smiled, obviously in a good mood, before turning back and shouting, "Old dog, do we fight or negotiate here? Do you think you're qualified to bargain with this old master?" The old leader of the Sun Clan stared at him with an enraged gaze, as if he couldn't to cut Yang Kai to pieces, drink his blood, and eat his meat. Although the Sun Clan was really somewhat hesitant to act here, none of them put Yang Kai's cultivation in their eyes. They felt as long as they could find the right opportunity, when the divine tree's guard was lowered, they could instantly take Yang Kai's life. So after listening to Yang Kai's question, the Sun Clan's old leader refused without giving it a second thought. Such great shame. In his own home, the divine tree, which was regarded as his clan's greatest treasure and foundation, was seduced by a little foreign brat. Such shame for the Sun Clan could not be erased even if they killed Yang Kai 10,000 times over. However, Yang Kai simply sneered, and from the protection of the divine tree's branches, stared down at the old man and replied confidently, "Indeed, I do think I have the qualifications." As he spoke, Yang Kai sent out a faint pulse of spiritual energy. This pulse didn't contain any murderous intent, nor did it have the slightest attack power, but when it swept over several of the nearby Sun Clan clansmen, the latter collapsed to the ground, clutching their heads as they howled in agony. 3 breaths later, these people all went stiff, lying there without the slightest hint of vitality, blood leaking from their 7 orifices. The rest of the Sun Clan masters instantly went pale, the old leader included, sweeping his gaze around as cold light flashed across his eyes. Even he had not realized what kind of trick Yang Kai had used just now. On top of that, the clansmen who had fallen were not weak, yet none of them seemed to have the slightest ability to resist this human boy's strange attack. A chill filled the air as the remaining Sun Clan masters turned to look at Xianxia again, this time a hint of fear apparent in their stares. "Boy, you've successfully enraged me," the Sun Clan's leader muttered in a low tone, his murderous intent so thick it was almost palpable. Xianxia remained indifferent and simply shook his head with a smile. "I'm just giving you proof I have the necessary capital to bargain with you." As he spoke, his voice suddenly became cold. "My patience is limited. Old dog, you'd best give me a reply as soon as possible or else, besides your few precious saints, everyone else will die." Hearing this, over 80% of the Sun Clan masters stumbled backwards in horror, as if doing so gave them a sense of security. What they didn't know was that their knowledge seas had already been contaminated by soul-devouring insects, so no matter where they tried to run it was pointless. The old leader of the Sun Clan seethed with anger as he glared towards Xianxia, only managing to squeeze out a strained voice after a long silence. "What do you want? Let us leave. That is my only requirement," Xianxia shouted. "Leader, we can't just let him go. Our clan's losses are so heavy. Allowing him to just walk away is unacceptable," someone immediately objected. "And if we don't kill him, my anger will never subside." "Kill him. We must kill him, even if we have to injure the divine tree to do it," several Saint Realm masters shouted angrily, determined to put Xianxia to death for his crimes, unwilling to accept any kind of negotiation. In response to their clamoring, Xianxia just laughed and shouted, "Your losses are indeed not small, but have you not thought about what you've gained? Your divine tree now has its own consciousness, which means it is a completely different life form from before. As long as I leave this place, you can slowly get closer to it, and once you earn its favor, the benefits you'll receive are unimaginable." Just as Xianxia spoke these words, the huge divine tree shook noticeably, apparently quite dissatisfied and aggrieved. It seemed quite sad as it thought Xianxia was trying to abandon it. Xianxia's heart clenched and quickly used his divine sense to convey some comforting words to it while still negotiating with the Sun Clan. "However, it's a different story if you force me to remain. Because I helped the divine tree evolve into its current form, it is very close to me right now. As long as I'm given enough time, I'm confident I can make it only favor me, so that even if you try to win it over in the future you won't be able to. This won't take me long either, perhaps only a few days. So if I were you, the one thing I'd want to do is send me away as soon as possible." The brows of all the Sun Clan elders wrinkled upon considering this. Xianxia's words were spoken from their perspective, and although they were still quite suspicions of his claims, what he said was undeniable possible. The divine tree undergoing such a huge change was a pleasant surprise to them, even taking into consideration the losses they had suffered. This change was undoubtedly a great thing for the entire Sun Clan. The divine tree possessing its own soul and being able to actively assist them was something the Sun Clan had never even dreamed of before. "We could also just kill you and end these troubles once and for all." The Sun Clan's old leader obviously was something tempted, but when he thought about how many of his clansmen had already been killed, he couldn't bring himself to simply let Xianxia go free like this, gritting his teeth as he declared, "As long as you are dead, the divine tree will still belong to my clan." "Fair enough." Xianxia smiled. "You guys really should have enough ability to kill me. I'm not arrogant enough to think I can escape from so many of you, but I can at least bury most of your clansmen along with me. You should ask yourselves if you can afford to pay such a price. In addition, if you want to kill me, you'll have to damage the divine tree. If you hurt it now, will it ever accept you? This little guy's thinking is quite simple. If you injure it, it will definitely remember for the rest of its life. Old dog, don't try to steal a chicken only to lose your rice." Xianxia's shamelessness as well as his insulting tone caused the Sun Clan's old leader to feel both rage and helplessness. The elders who had been calling for Xianxia's death also fell silent and frowned, feeling the situation had become somewhat tricky. If the divine tree did not have its own consciousness, even if it meant damaging it, they wouldn't hesitate to kill Xianxia. But now that the divine tree could think for itself, they didn't dare act rashly, for fear of exactly what Xianxia said would happen. If the divine tree came to hate them, and refused to give them any Yang attribute energy from now on, the entire Sun Clan would be finished. Turning their eyes towards their leader, All the Sun Clan clansmen waited for him to make a decision, none of them willing to offer their opinions anymore. The Sun Clan leader pondered for a while before staring up at Xianxia and asking, "Can you guarantee that the divine tree will recognize us when you leave?" "Why do I have to guarantee you anything? It'll all depend on your own hard work. For a start, you should speak more politely right now. You acting so hostile towards me makes this little guy quite unhappy." Seemingly in order to back up Xianxia's words, the branches of the divine tree swung more fiercely at that moment, as if trying to express its anger. Many of Sun Clan's masters couldn't help frowning, their hearts filling with grief and indignation, quickly restraining their murderous intent, while their expressions became even uglier than before. "And that's right, Smile. If fate decrees it so, the next time we meet we'll all be good friends, right? Little brat, don't reach out for a yard after taking an inch." The old Sun Clan leader's face contorted, his extreme unhappiness apparent to all. Xianxia simply grinned happily in response. "Good. I'll let you leave, and I hope we will never meet again," the Sun Clan leader shouted gloomily. "Glad you understand." Xianxia nodded towards him approvingly and added, "Not only me, but my companion as well. Right, I'll take those 2 demon race cultivators too." The Sun Clan leader frowned. "You want to take those 2 as well? They have nothing to do with you, right? I have a good and generous heart. Helping others brings me the greatest joy. I simply can't stand the thought of others suffering." And Linger, who was still hiding behind Xianxia, heard these words and rolled her eyes. "In any case, your divine tree has now evolved, obtaining wisdom and awareness. You have no need to offer it those demon race cultivators as blood sacrifices anymore." Xianxia continued to persuade. The Sun Clan leader nodded lightly, turning to one of his subordinates and shouting, "Go bring the 2 demons here." The man hurried off towards Xianxia's old palace after receiving this order. Xianxia sat down and waiting atop the divine tree's trunk, and soon after the Sun Clan escorted Wuxia and the other demon race man over. Wuxia's face was gloomy and was constantly struggling, but his resistance was only counterproductive. When he arrived at the divine tree, his face was swollen and bloody, obviously having taken a harsh beating. "Brother Wuxia!" Xianxia stood up and shouted. Wuxia frowned, his expression becoming somewhat awkward but still eventually nodding in response as he glanced around suspiciously. Wuxia could feel that the atmosphere at the scene was odd, but he couldn't understand what exactly had happened, so he figured it was best to keep silent for now, lest he say something wrong. "Bring those 2 up." Xianxia patted the divine tree and whispered. The next moment, 2 long, whip-like energy ropes stretched out towards Wuxia and his companion, wrapping them up and hauling them over to where Xianxia was standing before the 2 of them could react. Upon landing, Wuxia whispered in a low voice, "Brother, what is going on here?" "I'm taking the 2 of you with me." Xianxia smiled. "With you?" Wuxia's face changed slightly. "Where?" "Away from here." Wuxia was dumbfounded, quietly glancing at the crowd below as he whispered, "They agreed. Whether they want to or not, they had to agree. Rest assured, I've already reached a deal with them." "Then why does it look like they all can't wait to kill you? Are they really willing to let you go just like that?" Wuxia was completely lost. Xianxia nodded in response, not bothering to explain too much, simply calling out to the people bottom, "Where is the exit?" The Sun Clan's leader took a deep breath to calm his anger before coldly pointing in a certain direction. Xianxia looked over before gently patting the divine tree. The next moment, the huge divine tree slowly began moving, the earth shuddering with each great step it took as it carried Xianxia and the others towards that side. Behind them, a large group of Sun Clan masters followed closely. Wuxia's eyes went wide as he stared at the big walking tree foolishly, muttering in a tone of disbelief, "Brother, what strange method is this? Why is this tree walking on its own? He. The divine tree has gained sentience, so it can understand my words. Incredible." Wuxia still couldn't believe what he was seeing, even with it happening right before his eyes. Sweeping his eyes around, he quickly discovered that the divine tree really was walking on its own. supported by two golden pillars in the shape of human legs formed entirely of yang attribute energy. In an instant, Wuxia felt his understanding of the world undergo a drastic change, he and the other demon race cultivator unable to speak for quite some time after. The divine tree's movements were awkward and neither fast nor slow. It took half a day of walking before Xianxia felt a faint trace of void energy coming from up ahead. Void energy was something that only appeared in the presence of a void corridor. Since Xianxia could sense void energy in front of him, it was safe to assume there was a void corridor up ahead. A moment later, a pitch-black hole appeared before everyone's eyes in a spot several dozen kilometers away from where the Sun Clan lived. Xianxia secretly nodded to himself, thinking it was obvious he hadn't been able to detect this void corridor earlier given how far away it was from where he had been kept prisoner. A moment later, the divine tree stopped in front of the void corridor. This void corridor was about 3 meters in diameter and could allow several people to walk through it side by side. However, it was obviously not big enough to fit the divine tree through. If the divine tree tried to enter it forcibly, there was a great chance that the void corridor would collapse and crush it into dust. Brother Wuxia, do you have any impression of this place? Xianxia asked in a serious tone. Wuxia observed the area for a while before nodding lightly. I remember seeing this place when we were first captured and brought here. That's good. Xianxia nodded with satisfaction. Although he has already reached an agreement with the Sun Clan, Xianxia had no idea if they would bring him to the appropriate void corridor. If the world on the other side of this corridor was not the demon land but instead a forbidden zone or dangerous region, all his efforts would be in vain. Boy, you're certainly cautious enough, the Sun Clan leader snorted. Since this old master promised to let you go, I won't play any tricks. There is only one exit to this place. There are no other void corridors. One can never be too cautious. Xianxia didn't pay the old man's sarcasm any mind, instead wearing a serious expression as he spoke to Wuxia and the other demon race man. You two enter with and linger first. I'll follow soon after. Wuxia and this demon race's cultivator's demonic chi and spiritual energy were both still sealed, so they were currently no different from ordinary mortals with the exception of their great physical strength. Remaining here would only be a burden for Xianxia. Hearing this, the two of them nodded, the other demon race cultivator not saying a word before stepping through the void corridor and disappearing while Wuxia shouted, Brother, you must be careful. We'll be waiting for you on the other side. Xianxia smiled and nodded. Wuxia stepped into the void corridor, leaving only and linger behind, the latter shooting a worried glance towards Xianxia before she too evacuated. After the three of them left, Xianxia let out a light breath and then sat down atop the divine tree's trunk, not immediately following after them. All of the Sun Clan clansmen frowned as they stared at him vigilantly, worried he was up to some kind of mischief. Boy, why don't you leave? We've met all your requests already. The Sun Clan leader stared at him as if looking at a god of plague, hoping he would hurry up and disappear. This time, the Sun Clan had suffered a huge loss but had no choice but to choke it down. As long as they had the divine tree which had evolved into a sentient life form, the price they had paid would be worth it. No need to be so anxious. I'm just having a quick rest. Xianxia smiled as he began circulating his true chi and controlling his breathing. Meanwhile, he sent his consciousness into the trunk, his soul avatar manifesting itself inside the divine tree's heart a moment later. Under the divine tree's protection, Xianxia wasn't worried about the Sun Clan masters trying to harm him. Sensing Xianxia's arrival, the divine tree immediately rejoiced and the flow of energy inside its trunk became faster. Calm down. Xianxia quickly communicated to it. I need to ask you something. I'm about to leave this place. Would you like to go with me? The divine tree's soul immediately began wrapping around Xianxia, expressing its agreement and eagerness. Seems like you're willing. Xianxia smiled happily. Good. Although I have never tried this before, this method should be feasible. Remember, if this doesn't work, you'll have to stay here for the time being. If that turns out to be the case, I promise you that before long I'll come back to get you. Xianxia's message was a bit complicated and the divine tree didn't seem to understand it for a while, but by feeling the emotions behind Xianxia's words, it still managed to somehow understand. becoming a bit sullen for a moment before quickly recovering, seemingly happy to receive the latter's promise. Good. Then first, I'll leave my mark with you, Xianxia said quickly before consuming a massive amount of his spiritual energy to leave behind a mark on the divine tree's soul. This way, even if he failed to take the divine tree away with him today, he would be able to subtly sense its existence no matter how far they were apart. This was different from the time he accepted and Linger's soul brand. One instance was Xianxia receiving something, the other was him giving. In other words, if the divine tree's soul ever became damaged, Xianxia's soul would also suffer harm. On the other hand, if Linger's soul was to be injured, Xianxia wouldn't suffer any ill effects. After he finished communicating with the divine tree, Xianxia took back his consciousness and returned to his body. In front of everyone's eyes, Xianxia slowly got up, swept his eyes over the Sun Clan masters indifferently. His gaze filled with a firmness that had not been there before. His body straight like a javelin, as if he had just made a serious decision. The Sun Clan leader's heart jumped as he quickly shouted, "It's bad. This little brat lied to us. He's up to something." Xianxia let out a great laugh before calling out, "I'm not up to anything. I just thought I'll give you all a surprise before leaving." Saying so, spiritual energy poured out from Xianxia's knowledge sea and immediately wrapped around the entire divine tree. With a single through, from inside Xianxia's body, the wordless black book began emitting a powerful suction. Dong! Xianxia's heart clenched tightly, thumping as if it had been struck by a hammer. His face went white as his figure stumbled. In that instant, Xianxia felt the aura of death close in on him. However, no one paid any attention to him as they were focused on something much more astonishing. Right before their eyes, the huge divine tree turned into a stream of light and magically vanished. Everyone from the Sun Clan was dumbfounded, all of them standing in place with their jaws dropped, unable to process what had just happened. Through sheer force of will, Xianxia managed to maintain his consciousness and not faint on the spot, turning around rapidly and leaping into the void corridor, releasing a series of attacks he had prepared beforehand. His true chi surged up and the surrounding aura became chaotic. Hong long long. As the sound of explosions rang out, the void corridor warped and void energy began spewing out from it. A moment later, the void corridor suddenly shrank and disappeared. At the same time, pitiful screams resounded from all directions. As soon as Xianxia had left, the soul-devouring insects which had infected the Sun Clan no longer had anything holding them back and immediately went wild, causing every cultivator before the Saint Realm to fall to the ground. The Sun Clan's old leader and Saint Realm elders all stared blankly at their surroundings, unable to utter a single word. The divine tree had disappeared. The only void corridor which linked them to the outside world was destroyed, and a massive number of their clansmen had inexplicably died. All these tragedies had occurred in the span of a few breaths, not giving them any time to process what was happening. The void corridor being destroyed was within their expectations. The Sun Clan's masters had long seen that Xianxia had such a plan. However, they made no attempt to stop him from doing so. In any case, they had already lived inside this mysterious small world for generations, and outside was the demon land. It wasn't safe for them to come and go through it, so the void corridor being destroyed didn't bother them too much. Their clansmen suddenly falling down dead was probably the result of that little brat's mysterious methods. He had silently killed a few of them earlier without any of them being able to stop him, so this was probably just a repeat of that. However, what none of these powerful saints could understand was how this weak human race boy had caused the divine tree to disappear. The void corridor was not nearly stable enough to support the divine tree leaving, and even if it was impossible for its giant form to simply vanish in front of their eyes. "Little thief! I swear I'll find you and chop your corpse into 10,000 pieces." The Sun Clan's old leader roared towards the heavens, the fiery red hair on his head all standing on end. The other Sun Clan elders also made similar oaths, but it was already too late. The object of their mutual hatred had disappeared. Amidst a sea of sand, Xianxia's body fell heavily to the ground, causing Che and the others who had arrived early to rush over in surprise. After seeing Xianxia's current state, and Linger couldn't help panicking. Yang Kai's face had drained of all color and his lips were a deep shade of purple. His true chi flow was chaotic and his spiritual energy was essentially non-existent. Although he didn't appear to have suffered any external injuries, his body had already gone cold, as if he was on the verge of death, his heart beating loudly yet without any sense of rhythm, seemingly struggling to continue. Ever after being chased by Saintess Nan last time, Yang Kai had not fallen into such a bleak situation. And Linger didn't know what happened in the mysterious small world after she had left, but seeing Yang Kai like this now made her feel incredibly anxious. Brother. Go Che also hurried over and shook Yang Kai, but he did not receive any response no matter what he tried. After carefully inspecting Yang Kai, Go Che found that the former's soul was fluctuating weakly and his knowledge sea had suffered a tremendous loss. He can't be saved. The other demon race man slowly shook his head, his expression somewhat low-spirited. Although he had no real connection to Yang Kai, regardless of anything else this time, it was thanks to Yang Kai that he could survive. Seeing his savior in such a state inevitably left a bad taste in his mouth. Go Che frowned and wanted to say something, but upon seeing the heart-wrenching look on Linger's face, he couldn't bring himself to speak. They had no pills or herbs on them currently, back in that mysterious small world. Even their universe bags had been taken away by the Sun Clan. Currently, even though they wanted to help Yang Kai, there was really nothing they could do. With their demonic chi and spiritual energy sealed, they also had no way of even assisting Yang Kai's vital functions. No, he won't die. And Linger kept shaking her head as she lifted Yang Kai's upper body and placed his head on her laps, her hands trembling as she gently tried to brush the sand from his face, as if afraid she would use too much strength and injure him further. The last time he suffered such serious injuries, he didn't die, this time, for sure. Dong. Another strange heartbeat was conveyed from Yang Kai's chest, after which his vitality seemed to become weaker once again. And Linger burst into tears as her heart filled with pain. Junior sister, don't cry, Go Che stuffily said. Your true chi is not sealed. Quickly try to support him. Hearing this, it was as if Linger was woken from a dream. Hurriedly using her 9 heavens holy land's mysterious divine skills on Yang Kai, trying to preserve his last remaining vitality. But no matter how hard she tried, the latter showed no signs of improvement. Ha! Go Che sighed heavily, feeling sorry for Yang Kai. Go Che had wanted to find a chance to repay him, but had not anticipated that the moment they escaped from that accursed mysterious small world, Yang Kai would actually end up like this. During the day, the heat that radiated from the sand was hard to endure, but when night fell, a deep chill filled the air, causing one to shiver unconsciously. Beneath the full moon, bursts of cold chi visible to the naked eye would occasionally leap from the sand, like ghosts. Gazing around, it was as if the endless desert had been covered in a thin layer of ice that reflected the pale moonlight, creating a beautiful yet mysterious air. At some indistinct location in this vast desert, Linger stared down at Yang Kai, her true chi surging as she tried to warm his ice-cold body. Currently, Yang Kai seemed no different than a corpse. After escaping from the mysterious small world during the day, he hadn't even opened his eyes. At the beginning, his body still had some warmth and his heart would beat occasionally. But as time passed, his body grew colder and colder as his vitality seemingly leaked out. He was like a candle in the wind, in danger of being snuffed out at any moment. And Linger had guarded him carefully this whole time, never once leaving his side. This was the future master of the Holy Land. Even if he truly was dead, there was no way Linger could allow any harm to come to him, a firm and resolute expression filling her face. Xianxia. Not far away, the sound of footsteps sounded, drawing Linger's attention. When she looked up, she saw Go Che, who had left to scout the area earlier some time ago. Even if he had great physical strength, he wasn't able to resist the chill of the desert at night, shivering as he walked, his hair covered in frost. And Linger's eyes flashed as a vigilant look crept onto her face. Having spent so much time with Yang Kai, she had also had contact with Go Che and knew that this demon race man was something of a lascivious delinquent. Now that it wasn't certain Yang Kai was dead or alive, she felt she had to keep her guard up against Go Che. However, Linger quickly relaxed when she remembered her opponent's demonic chi and spiritual energy were still sealed. How is he? Che came over to Linger and hurriedly asked. Linger simply shook her head slowly in response. So, in the end, he really can't be saved. You're not allowed to say that. He'll live. Linger immediately became angry, a sharp light flickering across her apricot-colored eyes. Good. Just pretend I didn't say anything. But you should still prepare yourself. Nothing in this world is permanent. Ha! Brother Yang's fate is truly quite cruel, Che sighed. Seeing Yang Kai suffer such misfortune in order to help them escape, Che's manner towards him became much friendlier. If he can survive, that would be for the best. This master wanted to bring him to Qingliao City to offer some hospitality. Saying so, Che sat down on the cold sand a short distance away, a slight grin suddenly forming on his face as he commented. I found that this human kid is quite interesting. I've captured a number of humans before, but none of them were anywhere near as impressive as Brother Yang. All of them put up an ugly display, immediately kowtowing and begging for mercy the moment they found themselves in danger. Brother Yang, on the other hand, has some real backbone. His temperament really fits well with my demon race, preferring to die fighting than live as a coward, a real man. Che rambled on for a while, but what attracted Linger's attention was something he had said close to the beginning, quietly asking, "Those humans you caught, what did you do with them?" Che swung his hand down in a chopping motion, causing Linger's pretty face to go somewhat black. She immediately decided not to talk to him more than absolutely necessary. At night, the vast desert was incredibly quiet. Only some scorpion-like creatures moved about. Che caught a few of them and ate them with great relish. As he ate, he gave a running commentary about their taste as well. As the night dragged on, the desert became colder and colder. Yang Kai's only remaining vitality also rapidly faded, a point that both Linger and Che noticing, both of them secretly growing nervous as they carefully watched over him. A half hour after the middle of the night, this last bit of vitality suddenly vanished. The light in Linger's beautiful eyes suddenly went out, her tender body shuddering uncontrollably. Che also let out a heavy sigh, feeling that the heavens were unjust. The two of them were only immersed in their sadness for a moment though before a pulse of vitality erupted from Yang Kai's body. This burst of vitality soon transformed into a raging flame, quickly heating up Yang Kai's near-frozen body. At the same time, true chi began flowing through his meridians so quickly and violently it could be heard. With a light puff, Yang Kai's entire figure was engulfed in flames as a translucent layer of golden true chi burst forth from his body, transforming the nearby sand in a sea of magma. Linger was shocked and hurriedly retreated, almost burning herself in the process. Che was also stunned by Yang Kai's current appearance. The poisonous tail of a big scorpion he had been eating slipping out of his mouth as his jaw went slack. Yang Kai suddenly coughed up a dark blood fog before taking back the true chi which had leaked from his body, quickly jumping to his feet as he glanced around vigilantly, only calming down a moment later when he laid eyes on a dumbstruck Linger and Che nearby, breathing a long sigh of relief while taking back his divine sense. Slowly sitting back down on the ground, Yang Kai adjusted his breathing as the scene before he fell into a coma flashed across his mind, allowing him to quickly grasp his current situation. There were no abnormalities in his physical body, but his knowledge sea was still in a state of turmoil, causing Yang Kai to moan in pain as he held his head and trembled lightly. Even after somehow managing to stabilizing his condition, Yang Kai couldn't reduce the dull ache he felt in his head. Where are we? Yang Kai opened his eyes and quietly asked, his face distorting from the near unbearable pain. The Demon Land's desert? Che replied somewhat mechanically before quickly coming to his sense and asking hurriedly, Brother Yang, are you dead or alive? Yang Kai raised his eyes and glanced over at him tiredly. What do you think? Ha ha. Che laughed raucously. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. Who was it that said he couldn't be saved? Linger shot him a cold glance. Che suddenly choked, unable to say anything in response. How do you feel? And Linger turned her attention to Yang Kai and asked nervously, "Terrible?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head. His soul was currently in a state of turmoil and was somewhat unstable. "Then you should quickly rest." Yang Kai nodded lightly, no longer speaking. Sitting cross-legged on the ground and trying to steady himself, he sent his soul avatar into his knowledge sea to more carefully examine it. Looking around, Yang Kai saw that his entire knowledge sea was in a desolate state. The rich burning flames and endless ocean water had all but disappeared, a sign that his spiritual energy had been severely overdrawn. His knowledge sea was also somewhat chaotic. At times, great winds would blow, while at others, thunder and lightning rained down, the entire world shaking unsteadily as if it would soon collapse. The reason for all this was because Yang Kai had forcefully brought the divine tree into the black book space. Never had he thought that this one, seemingly simple act would bring him so close to the gates of death. The things he normally stored into the black book space were small, the biggest one not even 1% the size of the divine tree, so even if it consumed some of his spiritual energy, it had only been a trifling amount. But this time, Yang Kai's spiritual energy had been completely exhausted. Bringing the divine tree into the black book space had nearly caused his very soul to collapse. After all, the divine tree was very different from anything Yang Kai had stored in the black book space before. Not only was it massive, it also contained an unimaginable amount of energy. It was understandable he had to pay such a price. However, it was worth it. Being able to take the divine tree away, Yang Kai felt that even if he had to pay such a steep price, it would be worth it. Now he didn't have to worry about fulfilling his promise with the divine tree. Yang Kai was a man of his word. His lost spiritual energy could be recultivated and supplemented by the 6-colored soul-warming lotus, so it wouldn't take too long for his spiritual energy to return to its peak. Moreover, this time, the 6-colored soul-warming lotus had played a vital role. If it had not protected Yang Kai's soul at the last moment, it was likely he really would be dead right now. Considering all this, Yang Kai quietly rejoiced. Withdrawing his soul avatar from his knowledge sea, Yang Kai next inspected the black book space. Just after arriving though, Yang Kai's soul avatar was embraced by a brilliant golden light. The divine tree was now here, its golden roots and jade-green leaves illuminating the once dull black book space. Surrounded by this burning aura, the pain in Yang Kai's soul decreased noticeably and was replaced with a warm, comfortable sensation. In response to Yang Kai's arrival, the divine tree's branches swayed back and forth, as if it was celebrating, a burst of eager calls emanating from its heart. Yang Kai smiled as he sent his soul avatar into the heart of the divine tree, allowing the latter's soul to immediately wrap around him. It was obviously aware that Yang Kai was currently in a very weak state and did not try to drag his soul avatar all over the place but instead carefully surrounded and comforted him. The next moment, a powerful energy poured into Yang Kai's soul avatar, quickly supplementing Yang Kai's lost spiritual energy. Yang Kai was pleasantly surprised and made no attempt to stop it, allowing the divine tree to display its capabilities. After an hour or so, Yang Kai's weakness had disappeared and he once again became energetic, his dried-up knowledge sea reaching a state of saturation. At the same time, all kinds of dark injuries Yang Kai had sustained were restored. Yang Kai conversed with the divine tree for a while and explained that it might have to stay in this place for a while. After receiving a positive response, Yang Kai promised to come see it whenever he had time before taking back his consciousness. Although the divine tree was reluctant to part, it didn't try to stop him. Opening his eyes again, Yang Kai discovered that the darkness of night was gradually receding, giving way to the morning sun. Wrinkling his brow for a moment, Yang Kai let out a light sigh as he estimated he would at least need to break through to the Saint Realm if he wanted to take the divine tree out from the black book space. Only by reaching the Saint Realm would be able to do with while not harming himself. However, he was not in a rush. Right now, he was still stuck in the demon land. Even if Yang Kai could release the divine tree immediately, there was no place for it to settle. It would be better to find a place for the divine tree to stay first. Soaring Heavensek's serene resplendent peak would be a good choice. Seeing Yang Kai open his eyes, Go Che and Enlinger, who had been monitoring him all night long, finally relaxed. Brother, why does it seem like you've been completely restored already? Goche asked curiously. An hour or so ago, Xianxia was still in a state close to death, and even if his restorative abilities were better than most, this kind of recovery speed was too abnormal. On top of that, Goche didn't see him take any kind of healing pill or medicine. It was really inexplicable. No, I've only somewhat recovered. Xianxia smiled and replied. Although he had saved Goche and the other demon race cultivator from the Sun Clan, he didn't have any intention to really forge a friendship with Goche. Rescuing them this time was a means to an end. Xianxia hoped to take advantage of the other party's status to move about freely in the demon land. As such, Xianxia didn't tell Goche the whole truth. He was still somewhat wary of this demon race man, feeling that Goche didn't actually treat him sincerely and wouldn't care much about the fact that the former had saved his life. Brother Goche, you're certain this desert is inside the demon land? Are you familiar with this region? Xianxia asked. Goche frowned and shook his head. This desert is a very dangerous area. Even my demon race try to avoid traveling through here. In this place, no matter how strong you are, there are things you can't easily overcome. I'm only certain we're in the demon land, but as to which direction we should go to reach civilization, I'm also at a loss. All we can do is start walking and hope we're going the right way, and that we don't run into any of the more troublesome dangers lurking around. Pray we don't get lost. Once that happens, I'm afraid we won't ever be able to leave this desert. Hearing Goche's speech, Xianxia and Enlinger both felt somewhat gloomy, secretly thinking to themselves that their luck had really been quite bad recently. First, they had been chased by Saintis Nan back in the archipelago, then forced to flee into an unexplored void corridor only to fall into the hands of the Sun Clan. Now, even after a death-defying escape, they had wound up in this seemingly endless desert in the middle of the demon land. The ups and downs of life really made one feel helpless. Soon after Goche finished explaining their situation, Xianxia's brow furrowed as he stared off in a certain direction, whispering quietly, "Someone's approaching," probing this newly appeared aura for a moment. Xianxia breathed a sigh of relief as he turned to Goche and said, "It's your clansman." "Oh," Goche replied casually, "that guy didn't die? He didn't return last night, so I thought must have fallen out here. Seems his luck wasn't so bad." When Goche spoke, his tone was light and carefree, apparently not showing any concern about his fellow clansman's life, as if he didn't care whether the latter lived or died one bit. Realizing this, Xianxia frowned slightly. A short time later, the demon raceman who Xianxia had rescued from the mysterious small world returned with a delighted look upon his face. "I found a way out." Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed, Goche asking urgently, "Really?" The man smiled and nodded. "I'm certain. I've explored this desert once before. At that time, I once encountered an oasis and made a distinctive mark on one of the trees. I came across that same oasis last night. It seems our luck isn't bad. This place is on the periphery of the desert. We only need to travel a few days in that direction to leave." As this demon race man spoke, his expression became more and more excited, having some difficulty containing his joy. Xianxia and Enlinger also breathed a sigh of relief, feeling like they had finally seen light after a long eternity in the abyss. Only needing a few days to leave this place seemed lucky enough. When they went back, Xianxia considered finding a place to enter secluded retreat for a while. "Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and lead the way. I'm dying of thirst here." Goche waved his hand and began running off in the direction the other demon race cultivator pointed. The latter also didn't speak any nonsense and quickly chased after Goche. "Let's go," Xianxia said to Enlinger, the latter nodding slightly as she kept pace with Xianxia, walking side by side with him. As she observed the two demon race cultivators rushing forward in a jubilant mood, Enlinger turned to the side and quietly whispered, "Xianxia, you have to be careful about that Goche. If you trust him too much, you'll only end up suffering." "Do I need you to remind me?" Xianxia chuckled. "I never had any intention to trust or make friends with him, but right now we're in the demon land. If we want to leave here safely, our best bet is to take advantage of his status." Enlinger nodded lightly as she said, Fortunately, he didn't see much of your true ability back in that mysterious small world, otherwise things would be even more dangerous. If he were to learn your true identity, it would also be bad. Yang Kai's expression became solemn as he said, "Never reveal your status to him, and try to avoid using any of your 9 heavens holy land's divine skills. I'm not some naive little girl. How could I possibly be so careless?" And Linger smiled confidently. "Hurry up, Brother Yang. What are you doing?" Goche suddenly turned back and yelled at Yang Kai. "We're coming." Yang Kai responded before turning back to Enlinger. "Let's pick up our pace." The other demon raceman's sense of direction was quite good. Even walking through this vast sea of sand with next to no landmarks for reference, he was able to accurately lead the way. This was especially impressive seeing how his demonic chi and divine sense were both still sealed, meaning he was relying solely on his own skill and instincts right now. After walking for roughly 3 hours or so, a faint speck of green appeared on the horizon. An oasis. In such a vast desert, only a few magical places like this one existed where one could find water and plants. Almost every desert had such places, but no one knew how they were formed or how they endured. Big oases could remain for hundreds or even thousands of years without any change, providing invaluable places for travelers to stop and rest. An oasis was often a life-saving place in the eyes of desert travelers. Seeing the oasis appear up ahead, the 2 demon race men began running even faster, rushing forward as if they couldn't bear to wait a moment longer. After the time it would take to burn a stick of incense, Yang Kai and Enlinger also arrived at the oasis edge. Unlike the outside desert's blistering heat, this place was actually just slightly warm, huge cactus and broad-leaf trees blowing in the breeze, creating a comfortable atmosphere. A large, sparkling lake lay in the center of the oasis. This lake's water was crystal clear, like a bottomless mountain spring, and had many strange and exotic plants growing along its shore. When Yang Kai and Enlinger arrived here, they found that Goche and the other demon raceman had not entered the water or even approached it, but had instead hidden themselves behind a big rock on the shore and were holding their breaths as they stared towards the lake, their expressions filled with a mix of caution and obscenity. Sensing Yang Kai's arrival, Goche quickly motioned to him, telling him to keep quiet, the look on his face quite strange. Yang Kai frowned, not comprehending what was going on, quickly bringing Enlinger over to the other 2 and peeking out from behind the rock. However, he didn't see anything of note at first glance. "What are you doing?" Yang Kai asked quietly. "Look over there." Goche quietly pointed to a certain spot on the nearby shore. Yang Kai and Enlinger both turned their gazes in the direction he pointed and suddenly froze up. On the shore, there were some neatly folded clothes, and from their style, it was obvious they belonged to a woman. These clothes were here, but the person was nowhere in sight, so the obvious conclusion was that they were currently swimming at the bottom of the lake. Yang Kai suddenly understood. Goche and the other demon raceman hiding here was all so they could peek at this bathing beauty. Shameless! Enlinger's cheeks immediately went red as she grit her teeth and a cold light flashed across her beautiful eyes, turning to Yang Kai and sharply saying, "Don't you dare join them!" Yang Kai curled his lips and firmly declared, "I've always been a paragon of virtue. I would never participate in this kind of dirty matter." Even as he spoke these words, though, his eyes drifted back towards the lake. Seeing this, Goche smiled towards Yang Kai and chuckled lowly. I knew Brother Yang was a man of great culture. At that moment, Goche felt that Yang Kai was suddenly much more pleasing to the eye. Yang Kai quickly said in a serious tone, "Perhaps this isn't such a good idea if you're discovered by her. Who does it matter if she discovers us? Is she going to eat me or something?" Goche snorted without any concern. Although he couldn't use any of his strength right now, in the end, he still had a distinguished identity. As the son of a demon general, there were very few people who would dare to attack him, so even if he was caught peeking, he didn't care. "Brother Goche, surely you don't lack women? Why bother doing this?" Although Yang Kai also understood a man's desire to seek out beauties, something about this particular situation caused him to feel uneasy, so he quickly tried to persuade Goche to leave this place. Goche sneered in response. "Naturally, I'm not lacking in women, but such thrills are always welcome. The other demon race man next to him also nodded, obviously agreeing with Go Che's point of view. Their two pairs of eyes then continued to stare at the lake's surface, both of them looking forward to the moment when the woman at the bottom of the lake would appear. Seeing this, Xianxia felt helpless and no longer wasted his breath. At that moment, a ripple suddenly appeared on the surface of the lake, and the two demon race men's breaths suddenly halted, their eyes opening wide in anticipation. Shio, shio, shio. A burst of noise suddenly rang out and a series of sharp water arrows shot out from the surface of the lake. Everyone's expression changed dramatically. Xianxia and Enlinger reacted quickly and managed to avoid these attacks, but Go Che and the other demon race man weren't so lucky. For the sake of getting a better view, they had completely pushed themselves up against the rock, so by the time they noticed the incoming attack, it was too late for them to avoid it. With a loud bang, the rock shattered and the sand flew up into the air. Stone debris shot forth, bringing with it a not weak force, caused Go Che and the other demon race man to fly back, both of them unable to open their eyes as they howled miserably. The two of them had instantly become battered and bruised. Xianxia caught a glimpse of a pure white form emerge from the lake, carrying with it a graceful and glamorous air. But before he could get a good look at this figure, he lost track of it, a cold chill running up his spine as his eyes shot open in surprise. After everything settled down, Go Che roared angrily, "Fuck! Damn whore! You dare attack this master?" The moment he spoke these words, though, Go Che was struck by some invisible force and sent flying through the air again, hitting the ground hard and tumbling several times. When he stood up again, his cheek was swollen and a blazing anger filled his eyes. Having suffered such humiliation, the only thing on his mind right now was to fight this unknown attacker, his eyes darting around searching for his target. He didn't have to look long, though. Standing a short distance in front of them was a beautiful woman who had just left the lake, her eyes coldly glaring at Xianxia and his group. Her body was full of mature charm, with long shapely legs, which peeked in and out of her pale blue dress. Her twin peaks were a grand sight to see and her shoulders were half exposed. Perhaps because she had just been bathing, her clothes tightly clung to her body, highlighting her excellent style. Just by standing there, she exuded a sense of beauty difficult to ignore. Unfortunately, at this moment, the woman's pair of beautiful eyes were filled with murderous intent, and a dangerous aura pulsed from her body, causing everyone around to shiver unconsciously. Xianxia's eyes narrowed, secretly cursing Go Che, wondering why, of all people, he had to annoy such a dangerous woman. When he arrived here, Xianxia didn't dare use his divine sense to examine the area, lest he annoy unnecessary trouble. So it was only after this woman attacked that he realized Go Che had provoked a true master. The other side clearly knew that someone had been peeking at her and had immediately took action upon leaving the lake. Go Che, who didn't seem to know the meaning of fear, shouted out as he held his swollen face, "Damn woman! You dare hit me again? So what if I hit you?" The woman glanced over at Go Che coldly. "If you dare spew another disrespectful word from your mouth, I'll kill you." "Oh," Go Che snickered. "I'd like to see if you have the courage to lay one finger on me again." As soon as the words left his mouth, a sharp blade of energy rushed towards Go Che's and instantly pierced his shoulder. Blood gushed out from the wound like a fountain and Go Che's face went pale, staring dumbfounded at the woman in front of him. He hadn't expected this woman would really attack him the moment he spoke, the sharp pain coming from his shoulder finally causing him some panic. Although he was a womanizer and a delinquent, Go Che wasn't a fool. From the methods this woman had shown so far, he knew that even if he was in peak condition, he wouldn't be her match. With a bloody hole in his shoulder, Go Chun became much more obedient. Though the look of anger on his face didn't fade, he at least stopped talking and simply glared at the woman instead. "Humans?" The woman curiously sized up Yongling and Enlinger, her brow furrowing slightly. "Since when did my demon race begin associating with humans? Interesting." Xianxia's expression darkened as he moved Enlinger behind him and condensed his true chi, preparing to act at a moment's notice. "Humph!" The woman snorted disdainfully, stepping forward lightly as she flicked her wet hair. glancing over at Goche and the other demon raceman. Your demonic chi and spiritual energy seem to be sealed. Was it these human brats who did that to you? Goche said nothing, but the other demon raceman shook his head slowly and explained. It was not them. We accidentally fell into a mysterious small world some time ago and were captured by the natives. It was thanks to this human boy that we were able to escape. Wastes. The woman's expression immediately became cold. Members of my demon race actually needing to rely on the pity of humans to live on dishonorably? Do you think you still have the qualifications to live in this world? Saying so, the woman lifted her slender finger and shot out a number of energy spikes. Shio, shio, shio. Instantly, the demon raceman had a few bloody holes opened on his body. A pitiful grunt leaking from his lips as he sunk to the ground, gasping for breath, his eyes filled with shock and horror. The woman did not intend to kill him. She was just dissatisfied with him relying on Xianxia to survive and decided to give him some punishment. So, what kind of skill do you possess? The woman turned her attention to Xianxia, her divine sense quickly sweeping him like a frigid gust of wind, examining him from head to toe. Another waste. The woman lost interest immediately after she probed Xianxia and learned what his current cultivation was. A moment later, the woman sneered and declared, Your courage isn't small, daring to be impolite to me. For that I should teach you what the true meaning of suffering is. But today I am in a good mood, so I won't immediately kill you. Come with me. Saying so, she waved her jade hand and a carriage-like artifact with a giant bed shrouded in a translucent pink canopy appeared out of thin air, a distinctly feminine fragrance wafting from it. The woman gracefully stepped over to the carriage, parted the curtains, and stepped inside, casually releasing 2 bursts of energy towards Goche and the other demon race man as she did. The next instant, the 2 of them felt all the seals in their bodies shatter, causing both of them to smile unconsciously. Little human girl, you also come up. The woman reclined on the fragrant bed, her graceful curves on full display, putting on a relaxed and lazy appeared as she beckoned to Enlinger. Enlinger was extremely wary and turned to Xianxia to silently ask what she should do. Xianxia nodded lightly to her, so Enlinger cautiously boarded the carriage and stood beside the bed nervously. You 3 carrying the carriage? Don't tell me you need me to teach you how to do even something so simple? The woman said lazily in a voice extremely pleasant to the ear. Xianxia couldn't help wrinkling his brow. Goche roared angrily. What thing are you? You actually want father here to be your carriage bearer? Do you have any idea who I am? Why should I care who you are? If you don't want to die, move your feet. If you don't hurry, I don't mind finishing you off right now. The woman's beautiful eyes flashed a cold light, her demonic chi rumbling ominously, as if she really would execute him if Goche dared to refuse. Goche ground his teeth, but he had no choice but to act obediently in the face of absolute power, shutting his mouth, stepping forward, and hoisting the carriage onto his shoulders. Xianxia and the other demon raceman shot each other a quick glance before also walking over helplessly. After receiving directions from the woman, the 3 new coolies flew up into the sky at an extremely fast speed. Atop the large bed, Enlinger sat, her back as straight as a board, observing the surrounding environment as she followed the woman's instructions to massage her shoulders. The woman apparently had no intention to communicate further, simply lying there with her eyes closed, enjoying the service. As the delicate fragrance wafted past his nose, Xianxia grumbled in annoyance. Originally, he had wanted to safely leave the demon land with the help of Goche, but now it seemed like there was no chance of that. It wasn't even certain this bastard would be able to protect himself. Xianxia would have to figure out something on his own. Half a day later, a huge city wall appeared in front of everyone's eyes. This city was located quite near the desert, and its walls were comprised entirely of stones harvested from there, giving the entire city a yellowish color. Inside the city, countless demons came and went. When the city came into sight, Goche's eyes suddenly bulged as he cried out in a hoarse voice, Sand City? Then you are... Shut your mouth. The woman didn't even open her eyes as she shouted lightly. Goche's hurriedly shrunk his neck, now seemingly terrified. all of his previous arrogance instantly vanishing without a trace. Seeing this, Yang Kai's expression also changed. Soon, the carriage arrived in the sky above Sand City. Following the woman's instructions, the carriage quickly came to a huge palace at the center of the city. The palace was built in a very unique architectural style, as if it was a mountain range all on its own, the highest peaks reaching several hundred meters into the sky. Flying to the front of the palace and standing before its highest point, looking down, it was possible to overlook the entire city, giving one a wondrous feeling. However, the palace seemed somewhat out of place in this city. Its walls and grounds were all constructed of white jade stone, and ornate carvings of dragons and phoenixes adorned its great pillars and halls. Precious crystals were inlaid wherever one looked. When the carriage arrived, a tyrannical-looking demon race man quickly came over and respectfully said, "Mistress, you've returned?" The woman nodded lightly and stepped down from the carriage. "These people are—" The man glanced over at Yang Kai and others with a puzzled expression. Only when his eyes landed on Wuxia did a glimmer of suspicion appear on his brow, staring at the latter that seemed somewhat familiar. "Send someone to pass Wuxia a message. Tell him if he wants to see his precious son in one piece, he needs to prepare enough ransom to exchange for him." The woman glanced over at Wuxia before continuing. "And also tell him that there are 3 others accompanying his son. Whether he redeems them as well is up to him." Yang Kai's eyes narrowed. This conversation clearly indicated that this woman had long ago seen through Wuxia's identity. But even though she knew who he was, she still dared treat Wuxia like that. And from the way she so casually spoke Wuxia's name, it was easy to infer just what this woman's identity was. Wuxia was one of the 4 demon generals. The only ones who dared not put Wuxia in their eyes were the other demon generals. Amongst the 4 demon generals, there was only one female, Xueli. She bore a feminine name and was a charming lady. However, even her elegance could not overshadow her ruthless and cruel personality. The woman who they accidentally met was actually a demon general, and Wuxia, not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth, actually dared try to peek at her naked body. Yang Kai couldn't wait to beat Wuxia to a pulp in order to vent the rage in his heart. "Mistress, I doubt that Wuxia will care about the lives of these 3. Xueli's subordinate smiled grimly, as if taking pleasure in others' misfortune as he stared at Yang Kai and the other. "Just pass the message to him anyways. Right. Tell Wuxia that this little human brat is his son's savior." Xueli stressed. "I'd like to see how Wuxia will treat this matter." "Oh? How surprising, a demon general's heir actually owing his life to a human. Interesting. Subordinate will go and deliver this message personally." "Go!" Xueli waved her hand. Senior Xue. Wuxia called out hastily. "What?" Xueli gave him a faint look. "Is it possible to discuss this matter? If you want a ransom, I can collect it on my own. There's no need to bother my father over such trivial matters." Wuxia pleaded with an awkward look upon his face, apparently afraid Wuxia would blame and punish him. "This matter is beyond your ability to control." Xueli coldly snorted, no longer paying any attention to him, turning around and walking into the palace. Immediately after, a group of demon race guards came over and escorted Yang Kai's group of 4 into the palace. The 3 men were brought to rooms in one wing of the palace, while Enlinger accommodations were arranged next to Xueli. Unlike back in the Sun Clan, no restrictions or seals were placed on them. Xueli seemed quite confident that none of them could escape. Not only did she not limit their freedom in any way, she even had meals delivered to them 3 times a day, treating each of them more like guests than prisoners. Although there wasn't anyone guarding them, Yang Kai still behaved honestly, not making any attempt to escape. In the presence of Xueli, Yang Kai knew he wouldn't be able to escape even if he tried. What's more, he had been separated from Enlinger. Yang Kai had no intention of abandoning Enlinger here and escaping by himself. Wuxia seemed to be aware of his blunder this time and was now behaving very docile, as if completely exhausted by the situation, no longer showing any hint of his former arrogance. Xueli had sent a messenger to Wuxia, not selling her fellow demon general the slightest bit face and directly asking for a large ransom amount in exchange for his son. Yang Kai figured Go Qiong wouldn't care about his or Enlinger's death and at most would redeem Go Che and the other demon raceman. Yang Kai had previously heard about the 4 demon generals, the top masters of the demon race, each of them possessing tyrannical strength and influence. These 4 masters each governed territories in the north, east, west, and south corners of the demon land, guarding its borders and preserving order. Normally there was very little exchange between them, but apparently the only woman among them, Xueli, did not have a very harmonious relationship with the other 3 demon generals. It was for that reason that the territory she governed was relatively desolate. Whether it was in terms of ambient world energy density or the richness of the land's resources, Xueli's territory was incomparable to the other 3 demon generals. Even the relatively uninformed Yang Kai had heard such rumors before, but upon seeing the situation for himself, he realized these rumors weren't groundless. Xueli's capital was Sand City, which was situated near the vast, uninhabitable desert, and her relationship with Go Qiong was obviously bad. However, since she sat in the position of a demon general, there was no doubt she had her own unique skills and means. Such a woman couldn't be treated lightly, so Yang Kai doesn't dare take any rash actions. As such, Yang Kai spent his days in the palace quietly, without trying to stir up any kind of trouble. Go Che, on the other hand, apparently tried numerous times to escape, but each time his attempts were foiled by the masters serving under Xueli and then beaten mercilessly as punishment. After suffering like this for a month or so, Go Che finally became resigned to his fate. Learning from Go Che's mistakes, Yang Kai became even more cautious about his actions. More than a month later, Yang Kai, who was meditating in his room, suddenly heard footsteps outside and opened his eyes, staring towards the door calmly. After a while, the door was opened, and the demon race master who had sent the letter to Go Qiong walked inside and said to Yang Kai, "Get out! Mistress wants to see you." Yang Kai stood up silently and followed after him. The man turned and looked at Yang Kai a few times as they walked forward, each time snickering faintly, as if he was seeing something quite amusing, a taunting look in his eyes. Yang Kai frowned and instinctively noticed something was wrong, but he did not ask anything because he knew this man wouldn't reveal anything to him. After walking for some time, the man led Yang Kai to a grand hall. There was a grand and spacious chair at the front of this hall, covered in luxurious furs and blankets dyed a dark red color, giving it a majestic appearance. Xueli lay there silently, her shapely body with all its exquisite curves on full display, her eyes closed and hands folded as if she was in a meditative state. In the center of the hall, a large incense burner released a pleasant scent which filled the room. And Linger, dressed up as a maidservant, stood next to Xueli with a somewhat tense posture. Seeing Yang Kai arrive, and Linger's beautiful eyes lit up briefly as she threw him a look of concern. In response, Yang Kai just slowly shook his head, signaling to her that he was fine. After being captured and brought here, the 2 of them had not seen one another. Yang Kai had been confined in his own room while Enlinger had been accompanying Xueli. In this Sand City palace, the only humans were Yang Kai and her, so Enlinger naturally placed all her hopes on him and was obviously concerned about his well-being. Seeing him safe and sound now, Enlinger couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief, smiling to Yang Kai slightly but not daring to make any unnecessary noise. Yang Kai looked around and soon found that Go Che and the other demon raceman were also standing here, the expressions of both of them full of panic and fear, like a pair of mice that had seen a cat. "Mistress, we've brought them," Xueli's subordinate quietly reported. Xueli nodded lightly, slowly opening her pair of enchanting eyes and glanced down, slowly straightening herself up while stretching her waist lazily. Her movements allowed the blouse she wore to rise up and reveal her flat white belly and delicate navel, filling the air with an intoxicating air. No one dared to stare at her though. No one but Yang Kai, that is. Xueli's eyes immediately became sharp as she glanced towards Yang Kai. As if he had just been burned, Yang Kai felt a slight pain on the skin of his face, but he did not avert his gaze, remaining indifferent as always. Xueli didn't seem to care about such trifles and instead got down to business, Go Qiong replied. Go Che's body trembled, wringing his hands nervously as he stared up at Su Li and asked in a half-whisper, "What was his response?" You are his son. After falling into my hands, what do you think his response was? And your father paid enough ransom to redeem you. Hearing this, Go Che's expression changed to one that was an odd mix of happiness and depression. Happiness because he could finally escape from Xueli's grasp, but depression over what kind of punishment he would suffer once he returned home. This contradictory mood was openly expressed on his face, making it particularly entertaining to see. What about me? The other demon race man asked anxiously. You were also redeemed. Xueli nodded lightly, a teasing smile creeping onto her face as she next said to Yang Kai meaningfully, You and this little human girl as well? Go Qiong redeemed all of you. And Linger was first stunned, then happy, her furrowed brow relaxing somewhat. On the other hand, Go Che and the demon race man both wore strange looks upon hearing this, the two of them shooting a glance over towards Yang Kai before both of them lowered their heads, their expressions somewhat complicated. Yang Kai simply frowned, not only not showing the slightest joy but instead looking quite gloomy as he asked boldly, Are all you demon race people so generous? Xueli's brow rose as she looked at Yang Kai, smiling lightly as she replied, Go Qiong is not the generous type. This time was simply an exception. Is the ransom you demanded a large amount? Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he stared at Xueli. Even facing one of the 4 demon generals, he didn't show any signs of fear or cowardice, his expression always calm and composed. It wasn't a lot, but it also wasn't a small amount. It was just enough for Go Qiong to be annoyed for a while. Xueli smiled as she stared at Yang Kai with interest and even some appreciation. In front of her, few people could remain as calm as Yang Kai. Even the son of Go Qiong was acting like a timid rat, and contrasting the two, Xueli suddenly felt that this human boy was more worthy of her attention. At the very least, he had more backbone than many of the demon race men she had seen. Yang Kai nodded gently before suddenly turning to look at Go Che and asking, Brother Go Che, Senior Go Qiong spending so much money this time, do you have any thoughts on the matter? Ah! Go Che was startled and for some reason didn't dare to return Yang Kai's stare, his eyes darting about randomly as he somehow muttered, I have no thoughts. As he spoke, his expression was incredibly awkward. Does Brother Go Che really have nothing to say? Yang Kai's mouth curled into a sneer as he pressed the issue. Go Che slowly shook his head. The other demon race man next to him also stared at the floor and held his tongue. So, it's like that, huh? Yang Kai thought, aware that he was most likely jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. At the front of the hall, Linger stared at this exchange suspiciously, unable to understand why Yang Kai's attitude towards Go Che had suddenly changed so much, becoming cold and aggressive. Xueli and her subordinate both made no attempt to interrupt this exchange, each of them just grinning, seemingly enjoying the show. Good. Yang Kai grinned. Then I suppose this is goodbye, Brother Go Che. Heh, our friendship really was quite short. When Go Che heard these words, his face became somewhat red with embarrassment. Yang Kai ignored him and turned to look at Xueli, asking her seriously, Senior, if I said I want to refuse the ransom that Go Qiong paid for me, will you immediately kill me? Oh! Hearing this, Xueli's beautiful eyes couldn't help flickering with a touch of praise, asking lightly, Do you actually wish to refuse? Yes, I refuse. Hee hee. Xueli suddenly wore an amused smile, giggling happily, her proud peaks trembling noticeably. Her subordinate also wore an interested expression as he stared at Yang Kai, a touch of praise flashing across his eyes. After taking a moment to calm herself, Xueli softly spoke, If you refuse Go Qiong, that means I will lose a certain amount of benefits, so naturally I'd want to kill you. I have been holding on to you for so long, feeding and housing you. Am I just supposed to accept such a loss? However, the ransom has already been delivered to my hands, so I won't be letting go of it so easily. I can also use this as a way to slap Go Qiong's face. Good. I can spare your life. Yang Kai's face immediately went black as his mood became gloomy. He realized that Xueli's insidious words were pushing the responsibility onto him and placing him in direct opposition to Go Qiong. Although this was a trivial matter, how could a man of Go Qiong's status possibly bear being insulted so? He had kindly paid enough ransom to buy Yang Kai's freedom, yet the prisoner in question had actually rejected his offer. If word of this were to spread out, the world would no doubt treat Go Cheong as a joke for being despised by Yang Kai. A solemn demon general being despised by a mere human boy would no doubt anger Go Cheong. Although all of that was nothing but a farce. I accept your request. Shueli smiled brilliantly, quickly waving to Go Che and the demon race man. Get out. If I can still find you with my divine sense within half an incense worth of time, don't blame me for being impolite to you. As soon as she spoke these words, Go Che and the demon race man immediately transformed into streaks of light, flying out of the palace without so much as a glance back, in the blink of an eye already flying several thousand meters away, obviously using their full strength to flee as fast as possible. Shueli wasn't kidding. Her divine sense had been locked onto Go Che and the other demon race man. If they didn't flee far enough fast enough, she really would kill them. This woman was simply a vicious viper. You humans really are quite astute, Shueli said cynically. But since you refused the ransom that Go Cheong paid for you, you have to prove that you have enough value to me. My Sand City does not support wastes. So you won't just let me go? Yang Kai asked mockingly. Let you go? Shueli sneered. Humans who enter my Sand City can only leave one way. Death. But since you seem to be somewhat out of the ordinary, I don't plan on killing you right away. And don't disappoint me. Otherwise, I'll let you experience a life far worse than death. Saying so, she stood up and moved to leave the room. Senior? Unlinger hurriedly shouted, a look of desperation flashing across her beautiful eyes. Can you give us a moment to talk? Shueli frowned slightly but didn't object, simply turning around and leaving, silently acquiescing. After Shueli left, one of her subordinates grinned and sharply said, If you have anything to say, hurry and say it. Don't make me wait. I don't have much patience. Saying so, he too walked out of the hall. Only Yang Kai and Enlinger remained now. The Nine Heavens Holy Land Saintess quickly came over and asked Yang Kai about his present condition, a thick meaning of concern and worry in her voice. Yang Kai repeatedly assured her he was fine and then asked her how she was doing. Enlinger smiled bitterly and replied, Senior Xue hasn't mistreated me so far. She only has me accompany her and take care of some minor tasks, so you don't need to worry about me. More importantly, why did you refuse Go Cheong's offer to redeem us? Do you think I shouldn't have refused? I don't know. But that Shueli is not a good person. I'm afraid if we remain here we'll encounter danger sooner or later. She is not a good person, but neither is Go Cheong. Yang Kai coldly snorted. I refused because I want to keep control of my own life. Ah? Why do you say that? Enlinger was lost. Yang Kai explained carefully. If I accepted his ransom, that means I will owe him my life. No matter what kind of excessive demands he makes, I won't be able to refuse. But you also saved Go Che's life. If you take that into consideration, shouldn't the two things offset one another? You're still so silly? Yang Kai knocked her head lightly. That's the biggest problem here. Enlinger rubbed her forehead while staring at Yang Kai as if she had been greatly wronged. I don't get what you're saying. Explain it clearly. Ha! Yang Kai looked at her and shook his head. You being able to grow up must not have been easy. You must thank your Nine Heavens Holy Land for keeping you inside the sect all these years. If you had gone out on your own, I don't know how many times you'd have died already. Enlinger pursed her lips unhappily. I saved Go Che. That life-saving grace should have become something we could rely on to leave the demon land. But now it's actually a fatal problem. Think about the identity of Go Che. His father is Go Cheong, a demon general. Didn't Shueli say this when we first met, a solemn demon general heir actually needing a human to save his life? The meaning of that statement was that he should not have been saved by me, or at the very least, he shouldn't have been saved by a human. If I really accepted Go Cheong's ransom and allowed him to redeem us, within a few days, both you and I will wind up dead in some roadside ditch. Ah! Enlinger yelped as she covered her mouth. The best way for Go Cheong to not let news of this disgrace spread out is to silence all the witnesses to the crime. With no evidence, no one will know that his son had been saved by a mere human. Yang Kai smiled coldly. a dangerous light flickering across his eyes. Isn't all that just your speculations? And Linger was somewhat unable to believe what she just heard. It's not a guess, it's a fact, Yang Kai concluded. Go Qiong is not a generous man, so how could he suddenly be kind enough to redeem his son, a stranger and two humans? You should know that the amount of ransom he paid was not small. Clearly he has an ulterior motive. If my guess is right, on the way to Go Che's home, there are already masters waiting for us in ambush. Once we show up, all that will be waiting for us is death. And Linger's tender body trembled as a sense of escaping from certain doom suddenly overcame her. This point Xueli was also well aware of, but she didn't make any effort to inform us. That woman really is sinister. Yang Kai gnashed his teeth. No wonder when you refused she smiled so weirdly, so it was like that. And Linger suddenly realized. At the same time, she also felt a great sense of admiration for Yang Kai. If it had been just her instead, she would likely have happily left with Go Che, happily fantasizing about how Go Qiong would thank her for saving his son, not realizing the hidden murderous intent behind all of this. As a hint of fear flashed across her eyes, a sense of anger also welled up inside her. Go Che, that ungrateful dog, how could he not have known how his father thinks? Humph, he couldn't be clearer, Yang Kai sneered. You should have left him to rot in that mysterious small world. And Linger cursed furiously. That was my mistake, I wanted to borrow his identity and status. Unfortunately, it seems trying to be clever actually made me into a fool. Well, at least it wasn't a total loss. He did bring us out of that desert. Without him, we might have been lost in that place for the rest of our lives. Even if we had made it out, we probably would have been chased down by other demon race cultivators instead of standing here comfortably in Sand City right now. Everything has its pros and cons, it all depends on how one thought about it. Go Che had truly acted cold and ruthless, but Yang Kai had never been sincere towards him either, so there was nothing to really be disappointed about. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Let's not talk about this anymore. Right now, we need to consider how to survive while still in Xueli's hands. Since you're by her side, pay attention and observe her carefully. See if there's something we can use. Perhaps some casual discovery will prove to be a breakthrough point for us. And Linger nodded firmly, feeling a kind of solidarity and shared sense of destiny with Yang Kai. As they were speaking, Xueli's subordinate called out to them from outside the hall, urging them to hurry up. So Yang Kai quickly said goodbye to Linger and departed and was returned to his room again. Time passed and everything was quiet. Since Yang Kai rejected Go Qiong's ransom that day, he seemed to have been forgotten by Xueli, and before he knew it, 2 months had gone by. Yang Kai was also happy with the status quo for now. Besides meditating and cultivating throughout the day, he spent his time communicating with the Divine Tree. After several months, the Divine Tree's consciousness had matured greatly, and it was now possible for Yang Kai to hold simple conversations with it. From Yang Kai, the Divine Tree had learned a lot, and its wisdom was still growing rapidly. Today, it possessed ability equal to that of a 6- or 7-year-old child. Besides being slightly mischievous, everything about it was excellent. The Divine Tree was now rooted in the Black Book space, and Yang Kai could supplement his own Yang Qi and spiritual energy from it any time or place. It was as if Yang Kai was carrying a massive storage space of energy with him, which was extremely convenient to use. After 2 months of dedicated cultivation, Yang Kai's strength had increased significantly. One day, when Yang Kai's soul avatar dove into the Black Book space, he found something out of place. The rare ores he had stored in the Black Book space seemed to have decreased in number somewhat. These ores were collected from the last time Yang Kai entered the Starry Sky. After passing through the Starry Sky storm, he had found many precious ores left behind from the asteroid sea. He wanted to use these ores to create some powerful artifacts, but had never had time to find a suitable artifact refiner. Yang Kai wasn't too clear about the exact quantity of these ores, but after checking it over a few times, there were indeed fewer than he remembered. In the place where he had been keeping them, there was some scattered gravel remaining. These leftovers were completely composed of impurities. In other words, the essence of the original ores had been consumed, leaving only dregs behind. Yang Kai was puzzled and quickly brought his soul avatar into the divine tree's core to ask it about it. Yang Kai thought that the divine tree had secretly absorbed the essence from these ores, but after hearing his question, the divine tree actually shook its head and said it had done no such thing. Yang Kai laughed dumbly at this response and didn't ask again. The consciousness of the divine tree was only equivalent to that of a child. It was only normal for it to lie a little about such things at this age. Yang Kai naturally didn't have any intention to blame it. If the divine tree needed these ores, he would happily give all of them to it. Good. If these stones are useful to you, you can use as many as you want. You don't need to ask me first. Right, there is also a pool of medicinal liquid over there. You can absorb 1 drop of it every day. It may help your growth. The divine tree rejoiced slightly and immediately reached out a branch towards the pool of myriad drug liquid and took a drop, a moment later releasing a long, satisfied sigh. Seeing this, Yang Kai smiled warmly, but soon after he noticed that someone was approaching his room, so he quickly informed the divine tree before returning his consciousness back to his body. Just as he opened his eyes, the door was pushed open and Xue Li's subordinate waved towards Yang Kai indifferently. "Get out. Mistress wants to see you." Yang Kai frowned for a moment but refrained from asking anything and quickly followed the man out. Yang Kai didn't know what this man's exact cultivation was, but from the pressure he felt and how highly Xue Li's trusted the latter, it was likely this man was a Saint Realm master. The demon race was generally longer lived than those of the human race, so from appearance alone, this person didn't seem very old. He looked like a handsome 30-year-old man who constantly had an arrogant expression on his face. Only when he was in front of Xue Li would this man restrain himself, not daring to act prideful in the slightest. "Friend, how should I address you?" Yang Kai asked suddenly. The man turned his head and stared at Yang Kai for a moment before chuckling. "Mistress said your courage wasn't small." It seems she was right. "Boy, you don't seem to have the awareness a prisoner should have." Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders and replied casually, "Although I have indeed been confined by you, since you haven't done anything to me after so long, it means that I still have some use to you. Why should I act anxiously for no reason? Seems your head isn't too bad either." "Good. I like it." The man laughed before saying, "Call me UMO. The names of your demon race people are really weird." Yang Kai shook his head. "I think the names of your humans are the weird ones." UMO grinned. "What does your mistress want from me this time?" Yang Kai asked again. "I don't know. Maybe she thinks you no longer have any value and has decided to kill you." UMO grinned as he took pleasure in Yang Kai's misfortune, continuing scornfully, "You'd better prepare yourself, otherwise you may find yourself lacking a head without even knowing why." The corner of Yang Kai's mouth twitched slightly, but he managed to maintain his indifferent expression somehow. Seeing this, UMO nodded secretly, feeling like this little brat was indeed somewhat different. Any average person would probably be panicking after hearing such words, but this boy actually still looked quite carefree. In the same hall as before, Xue Li was waiting, but Enlinger did not appear this time. UMO brought Yang Kai here, bowed respectfully, and then stood to the side, staring at the latter coldly. Xue Li nodded lightly, lifted her eyes and swept Yang Kai, calmly saying, "I've kept you alive until today. Are you ready to create some value for me?" Yang Kai frowned. "What are you referring to?" Xue Li laughed lightly before slowly standing up and continuing. "I told you before, my sand city does not raise wastes. Since I allowed you to live, naturally I have a use for you. Good, a first-order transcendent. It's not easy to acquire such cultivation at your age. You should be a core disciple of some big force, yes." Yang Kai neither confirmed nor denied. "Well, that doesn't matter to me. I don't care which force you are from. Since you've fallen into my hands, you have no choice but to obey me. If you dare to defy my commands, you know the consequences." Saying so, her beautiful misty eyes flashed a cold light. "What do you want me to do then?" Yang Kai asked calmly. "Kill. Or being killed." Xue Li giggled and said, "UMO. Explain to him carefully. It's time for him to make his debut." Sitting her perfectly shaped bottom back down on her luxurious chair, Xue Li assumed a lazy positing while staring at Yang Kai faintly. Umo straightened his back and spoke to Yongkai next. The land around Sand City is barren, and the other places governed by Mistress Xueli are not any more bountiful. Even the world energy is thin in her lands. Moreover, because this place is close to the vast desert, hardly any traders pass through here, so it is reasonable to say that General Xueli's territory should be very poor. Could it be that it isn't? Yongkai tilted his head and asked. Umo grinned and continued. Not only is it not poor, on the contrary, the richness of Sand City is unmatched by any city in the Demon Land. The wealth that flows in and out of this place every year is simply incalculable. Yongkai raised his brow, somewhat surprised. Umo looked at Yongkai proudly, thinking this little brat would ask why, but after waiting for an awkward amount of time and seeing him not have any such intention, Umo grew annoyed and said, because Sand City has something that can attract all of the Demon Land's people. This one feature has made Sand City the most popular among all the Demon Land. Even the other 3 demon generals have temporary residences here. Oh, Yongkai couldn't help feeling somewhat interested. What kind of place can attract so many people? The Death Arena. Umo grinned. Simply put, it is a stage that allows cultivator within the same round to engage in life or death contests. Masters from all over bet crystal stones or materials on the competitor they fancy, and if that person wins, they can gain a certain amount of income. The odds are all different for each contest and the gains are not fixed. If your luck is good enough, you can win 12 times what you initially bet. Isn't that just gambling? And the banker is your Sand City? If that's so, you will profit either way. Yongkai grinned. We also need to cultivate, and that requires materials and supplies. But this territory is too poor, so we can only find ways to gain profits from those wealthy people's pockets. So you want me to fight, right? Good. Recently in the fights, we've had a string of bad luck and have lost quite a few crystal stones. You are a first-order transcendent, so although you're not much to look at, if you play your role right, we should still be able to recover some of our losses. Umo nodded slightly. Are there any benefits in it for me? Yongkai asked. You actually want benefits? Umo snorted. Of course, you want me to fight with my life on the line. Don't tell me there aren't any benefits for me in this at all? Yongkai replied as if it were only natural. Interesting. Mistress, what do you think? Umo looked over at Xueli and asked. Give him a little something. Umo nodded his head in acknowledgement, turning back to Yongkai and saying, since Mistress has said so, as long as you can let us win, we'll give you a share of the profits. Yongkai nodded lightly. Good. He then turned to Xueli and asked, if I can collect enough money this way, will you let me buy my freedom? Xueli's opened her eyes slightly, stared at Yongkai coldly, and then closed them again before saying, that will depend on my mood. If you behave well, I might consider it, but if you dare try to bargain back and forth or raise any fuss, I'll immediately kill you. Umo test his ability. He better not just be trash that can only talk big. As soon as she spoke those words, a terrible pressure burst from Umo's body and engulfed Yongkai. Yongkai's body bent and his knees sank, almost falling to the ground in that instant. Realizing the tyrannical force this aura contained, Yongkai's expression changed greatly as he madly circulated his true chi to resist the pressure coming from Umo. Umo was also greatly surprised by this development. From the moment he had laid eyes upon him, he had not liked Yongkai, so he wanted to take this opportunity to teach this human boy a harsh lesson and have him beg for mercy. Umo had wanted to let Yongkai fall to the ground and eat dirt, crushing the always indifferent look on the latter's face. So he was quite surprised when this little brat actually withstood the pressure he applied. His eyes flashing a cold light, Umo increased the pressure he was emitting again. Yongkai let out a grunt and his body once again began sinking, his knees bending further as his face turned red, clenching his teeth as he glared angrily towards Umo. The white jade floor suddenly shattered and cracks spread out from the position Yongkai was standing, causing the hall's walls to creak slightly from the load. Xueli also finally opened her eyes and stared deeply at Yongkai, a look of anticipation appearing on her pretty face, as if she wanted to see just how the latter would resist Umo. Under Umo's terrifying aura, Yang Kai's body quivered and blue veins began appearing on his skin, but after 10 breaths of time, he seemed to have adapted to the pressure and his body slowly began straightening up again. Yumo's look changed upon seeing this. He was clearer than anyone about how much power he was using. Under such pressure, forget a first order, even a strong second order transcendent cultivator shouldn't have been able to put up any kind of struggle, only a third order would barely be able to resist. But this little brat had actually managed to do just that, although it was obvious it wasn't easy for him to do so. Coldly snorting, Yumo's increased his power for the third time. Yang Kai's legs sank into the ground all the way to his knees this time. At that moment though, Yang Kai made a move, his body lifting off the ground like an arrow shot from a bow. True Yang Yuan Qi gathering in his hands as rapidly approached Yumo. The true Yang Yuan Qi conjugated to summon out a large golden sword in his hands. And before he could reach Yumo, Yang Kai had already swung it down. Murderous intent flashed across Yumo's eyes, and his own demonic qi took on a dangerous aura. "Enough," Shueli lightly said, her voice echoing throughout the hall. Like an invisible shockwave hit him. Yang Kai's body suddenly came to a halt, and the profound heavenly sword held in his hand shattered into pieces and disappeared into the wind. Yumo quickly took back his strength before frowning towards Yang Kai, who was standing nearby, coldly asking, "Boy? Were you trying to kill me just now?" Yang Kai only grinned back at him fiercely. "Yang Qi, an annoying Qi as always." Shueli frowned, seemingly unhappy. Although with her cultivation there was no way Yang Kai's true Yang Yuan Qi could have any kind of suppressive effect on her, it was still repulsive to her, like fire and water. The demonic Qi within her body was naturally rejecting Yang Kai's true Yang Yuan Qi. "Your strength isn't bad. This king has apparently been looking down on you." Shueli nodded lightly. Being able to persist for so long under Yumo's pressure and even daring to fight back at the last moment, trying to kill the latter, this human boy's combat power and willpower far surpassed what his present cultivation realm suggested was possible. As a Saint Realm master, Shueli's vision would not be mistaken on this point. "Mistress, we can make good use of this." Yumo swept Yang Kai indifferently, a sinister glint flashing across his eyes. "Good. It's time we made those bastards bleed." Shueli smiled coldly. "Arrange a match for him tomorrow. I want him to obtain victory after a difficult struggle." "Yes." Yumo snickered as he looked at Yang Kai like a wild wolf eyeing a lamb. "I have another request." Yang Kai cracked his shoulders and quickly added before Shueli could get angry, "This is the last one." "Say it," Shueli said unhappily. "Give me an artifact that can change my appearance. I don't want my true face to be seen by too many people, or there will be a lot of you demons chasing me in the future," Yang Kai said. Shueli was startled for a moment but quickly recovered, grinning as she said, "You think quite far ahead." As long as Shueli managed things properly, Yang Kai could bring her a great deal of wealth, and all the demon race powerhouses she scammed wouldn't dare direct their anger at her, so naturally their grievances would land on Yang Kai. That meant that even if he were to gain his freedom from Shueli, he wouldn't likely be able to escape the demon land alive. Yang Kai already had such an artifact, the one Du-One gave him. However, he didn't dare to use it. After all, that was the artifact he had used to change his appearance when he harvested the medicinal liquid of the 1,000-year demon flower. Once someone recognized that, it would bring him even more trouble, so he could only ask Shueli for something similar. "I don't have an artifact like that." Shueli shook her head. "But I can give you a mask. Just use that to cover your face." "Good enough." Yang Kai nodded. "Take him away. Have a good rest tonight. You better not die tomorrow." Shueli laughed. Yumo brought Yang Kai back to his room again, but before leaving used several seals on his true qi. In an instant, Yang Kai felt as if his true qi flow had slowed several times over and even his movements were somewhat sluggish. "Do you know why I did this?" Yumo asked. Yang Kai gently nodded, not putting up any resistance. From what Shueli had just said, it was easy to infer that she wanted him to fight a desperate battle tomorrow in order to fool the eyes of those rich demon race masters, causing them to misjudge his strength. That way, in the future, they underestimate Yang Kai's strength, bet against him, and lose their money, allowing Shueli to profit. Without Yumo applying these seals, Yongkai was likely to expose some of his strength mistakenly. The demon race powerhouses that were betting weren't blind, so even a slight upsurge of strength would cause them to realize that something was amiss.